1-A:3, Section 2A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee.
So moved.
Moved by Krista.
Second.
Second by Kate. Tom?
Aye.
Karen. Krista, aye. Cindy, aye.
Holly, aye. So now we are in non-public at 6:01. We'll be leaving, and we will be back shortly.
Jeez, pressure.
Moving forward with our agenda.
You know her?
Hello.
See what I live with, see?
We have an agenda adjustment that we need to make. We'll do that first.
I'm just holding this for Robert.
Hey,
Add a deliberative item.
I'm getting weight, but not that much.
We'll just do it. I was talking about the
Okay, yeah.
Can we do that first?
Yep.
So, school board, I just need a moment, we need to make an agenda adjustment. We had a, do you wanna tell us what we had?
Sure. I'll be making a motion to accept a donation. Mr. West had a donation come in today for the Washington DC trip. It exceeds the $5,000 amount, so it has to come to the board. So we'll be putting that forward. And then, as we talked about in non-public, there'll be a motion along with the retirement of a particular individual.
So, the DC thing, I'll just start. We need a motion to accept with gratitude the anonymous donation in the amount of $8,415 to support the families attending the trip to Washington DC. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Kate. I need a second by Rob. Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Wow.
With gratitude. All those in favor? 6-0, motion carries.
All right, I have a resignation tonight. Let's see, dear Superintendent Corey, I am formally submitting my resignation from the position as school social worker with SAU 41, effective March 3rd, 2025. This notice is provided in accordance with Section 10 of my contract, which requires a minimum of 30 days written notice for resignations. I appreciate the opportunities I have had to support students and families during my time with the district. I will work to ensure a smooth transition in the coming weeks and would appreciate any guidance on necessary steps to complete before my departure. And that is sincerely from Jillian Berkeley, Hollis Brookline High School.
Okay. So I need a motion to accept the resignation of Jillian Berkeley as a school social worker at the Hollis Brookline High School with an effective date of March 3rd.
So moved.
Moved by Kate. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Krista.
So
And
she's not completing her contract?
she's not on a contract, is she? Is she
She's not on the teacher's agreement.
Okay.
She's fulfilling the 30 days requirement that it's in her contract.
Okay, so she's on a contract, but not the CBA. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Sad to see her go. All
Done
right.
good work.
She has done great work. All those in favor? 6-0.
And I have a retirement. Dear Mr. West, I am writing to formally announce my retirement from the Hollis Brookline Middle School at the conclusion of the 24-25 school year on June 23rd, 2025. After more than 30 years of working with the staff and students of Hollis Brookline community, I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to have been part of such an engaging and supportive environment. I have wonderful memories of working alongside many incredible colleagues. I have enjoyed the various ways I have been able to contribute to our school by covering classes, serve as a coach for track and cross-country, while also supporting other athletics, or working with my team planning activities such as field trips, winter walks, medieval luncheons, or serving on committees. And of course, teaching my incredible students. Being part of the HB1 community has been a privilege. As I plan for my retirement, I am committed to ensuring a smooth transition. Please let me know how I can assist with this transition. I will be available for consultation during my retirement should the need for support arise. It has been a pleasure to be part of such a wonderful community and school district. I look forward to the next chapter of my life and will cherish the many memories and experiences. As part of the motion to accept Sue's retirement, per the CBA, she is entitled to the retirement buyout, which would be $40,642, which will be paid out from the FY25 operating budget.
Okay, do you have a motion?
To see what action the board will take regarding the administrator's recommendation to provide the retirement contribution for Susan Connolly of $40,642.14 from the FY25 operating budget as part of her accepting of her retirement.
Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Moved by Kate. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Krista. Are there any questions or comments? we would like to thank Sue for her many, many years of service and her dedication to our students. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor? 6-0, so that motion carries.
And that's it for
Okay,
our business.
so I have a little housekeeping. Sorry, I hate to, I'm not gonna make this too long, but, tonight is Krista Whalen's last meeting in this room. She has a meeting in March that she'll be here for, but 14 years of service deserves a little bit of recognition. So I wanted to take a moment to thank you from me, but also I'm not supposed to speak on behalf of the board, but I think it's safe to say that I'm gonna thank you from the behalf of all the school board, but this community, the many, many students who you've worked for, all the staff, the many HESA negotiations you've been involved with, the turf field project that you were involved with the first time and the second time and the third time. You explain apportionment at annual meetings with grace. There are so many things. I was gonna make a list and I thought it would take too long. But by far, the biggest thing and the most important thing is the fact that you have for many years brought the candy. And so, as just to take a moment, I bought you some very cliche things. Flowers, which somebody can pass down to her, and of course, candy.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and with that,
Thank you.
you're welcome. We might recognize you again in March, but this might be it, just, we'll see what happens. All right, so now I'm not gonna appoint a practice observer, because I think we're gonna move through this pretty quickly. So, with that, I need a motion that the board go into recess until the conclusion of the public hearings.
So moved.
Moved by Cindy. Second by Rob. All those in favor? 6-0. So we are in recess. And I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. So with the quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. This is a joint meeting with the Co-op School Board for purposes of reviewing the FY26 warrant and holding a public hearing on the proposed warrant, and the school board will be following up with a public hearing on the petition warrant articles. I would like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the Budget Committee members who are present this evening, who include Matt McGuire, Tom Whalen, Raul Blanchet, Dave Blinn, Tom Enright, and Tom Solon as our school board representative. Brian Rader is participating by cell phone electronically, and at this time I would like him to confirm that he is unable to be physically present this evening, and then to indicate if there's anyone present with him wherever he's located. Brian?
Yes, I'm not able to be there because I'm still recovering from surgery, so I'm not terribly mobile right now. But there's nobody else in the house.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So due to Brian's participation electronically, any motions that the Budget Committee takes this evening will be by roll call. So we'll have that little extra step.
Does that mean we have to do roll call too, or just you guys?
No, it's just us.
That's okay.
Okay. So before we recess for the public hearing, I just wanted to take a few minutes and give an overview of the warrant and share some relevant information. So the original warrant that we anticipated presenting this evening included 7 school board and budget committee articles related to facilities project, the operating budget, the HESA contract, the SAU budget, the facilities maintenance trust, and the contingency. Due to some changes which the superintendent will explain shortly, the change of the total warrant as written of $33.6 million will be adjusted and reordered to reflect a funding change for both of the facilities articles, one for the HBMS Energy Conservation Project, one for the Energy Conservation Solar Project for both schools. Those will now be numbered 1 and 2 because the funding change is to make those be bond articles, and bonds are required to be addressed first in the warrant. They are also required to have an individual bond hearing. Because of the decision to make this funding change, a bond hearing could not be noticed with the appropriate time. So while we will discuss them this evening, it is not the formal bond hearing, which will be held on
February 13th.
February 13th. So since we, had already anticipated discussing the projects and the lease ramifications, we'll shift that conversation to bond. Superintendent Corey will address some of the reasons for the change. And again, the official public hearing for both of those bonds will be on February 13th. Tom?
Are we going to present the financial stuff in the context of a bond or a lease tonight?
Bond.
The bond.
Okay.
So we'll proceed then through the operating budget, the HESA contract, the SAU budget, the facilities trust, and a contingency. While the total of the warrant will now total $33,077,808. There is an anticipated, we like to say as we discuss the warrant itself, the total as written. So as written, that is the total of, will be the total of the warrant. There is an anticipated adjustment, so pending the passage of the Article 1 on energy conservation, there will be an amendment to the operating budget, which will reduce the total amount of the warrant to $32,162,808. We also have 5 petition articles that are added to the warrant itself. One is to put the tax impact on the warrant, establish a charter commission, to adopt SB 2, to adopt the budget cap, and adopt a tax cap. For these petitions, there is a requirement that a public hearing be held in each town of the co-op. So tonight, that public hearing will take place for Hollis, and tomorrow night, Wednesday night in Brookline, that public hearing is scheduled for right before the deliberative session. 6 o'clock, okay. So just a little background information regarding enrollment in the co-op. So right now, we are looking at a 3-student projected enrollment decrease for FY26, so we would easily call that flat enrollment. These are based on NESDEC projections. We've heard a lot about, projects. I probably wrote the Brookline and Hollis school district levels about changes in enrollment due to the the growth in each community. But at this time, the projections that NESDEC has put forward does not really show a significant increase, and we're anticipating after a 5-year window that those increases at the lower schools will move up to the high school and middle school. From a composition perspective, back in, I would say, the FY17 to FY19 window, enrollment composition in the district was pretty much, very close to 50-50. The reason why it's important to look at this is because we do have an apportionment formula between the two communities where the average daily membership, which is derived from enrollment, plays a significant role. As we look in FY26, which are the kind of bolded and outlined columns on that chart, we're looking at a student distribution anticipated to be about 53-47. This current year, it's 54-46. So it is kind of just hovering around that, just slightly greater swing toward Hollis. Between the, if I didn't say this, between the two schools themselves, it's about a 1/3, 2/3 split in the population in general, with 1/3 being at the middle school and about 2/3 of the population at the high school. From a cost per pupil standpoint, this is the most recent data from the New Hampshire Department of Education. It is calculated through FY24 based on a report called the DOE 25, which are the actuals that are submitted by every district in the state. And they are, the New Hampshire Department of Education is responsible for articulating and calculating the cost per pupil for every district. So there is, the cost per pupil is simply not the amount we spend divided by students. There are some elements that are removed, but they are removed consistently across every district in the state, and we have consistently, on an aggregate basis, run below the cost per pupil average here in the co-op. So local tax effort is the amount that is raised through the local tax rate. So while we'll be discussing and approving a budget in March, the amount that actually affects your taxes is called tax effort. It's an amount of the budget reduced by revenues and credits to the district in total, and then additionally reduced by any adequacy and state aid that both of the communities receive. So you'll see here, looking at FY '25, which is the budget we are currently in right now, while we are had a budget of about $30.9 million, the amount that's actually raised through tax effort and taxation is $23.1 million. So it consistently is at 20% or more below the approved budget. So as I mentioned, revenue and state aid are two of the elements that are reduced from the budget itself to come up with the amount that we would be attributing or estimating for each community for tax effort. As we look to FY '26, you'll see that there is an estimated revenue reduction of approximately $767,000. This is due to the elimination of building aid. We will no longer be receiving the building aid payment because with FY '25, we're making the last payment on the middle school bond, and we anticipate a lower unreserved fund balance. So those two items, there are some other, puts and takes along the way. There are several elements to the revenue calculation, but those are the largest contributing factors. With regard to state aid, these are valuation and student-driven amounts that are specific to each community. So the adequacy grant is developed and derived specifically related to average daily membership. So you'll see for Hollis, the estimate is anticipated to go up by about $65,000 in adequacy, and Brookline's is anticipated to go down by $43,000. In Brookline's case, there is an additional element to the adequacy calculation that the community of Brookline in total receives that is decreasing over time due to legislation. So that is part of the contributing factor to the $43,000 reduction in adequacy for Brookline. And the statewide education property tax is developed by based on the equalized value in each community. A rate across the state is developed and charged to every community in the state, and then that amount is collected in taxation in each community through and calculated. The impact of the taxes is calculated against assessed value. But the rate itself to come up with the amounts for each community is based on a flat rate. Every single community in the state of New Hampshire is based on equalized valuation is charged the rate to come up with the dollar amount that they need to collect in taxes. So for Hollis, that's $1.35 million, which is a slight reduction of $6,244 from the current. And for Brookline, that's $632,000, which is a little more than $22,000 more for next year. So in total, there's really a minimal, maybe $30,000 net increase in aid. So there are the contributing factors, as I mentioned, to tax effort that we'll be seeing this year are an increase in the budget, lower co-op revenue, and the minimal state aid increases. So this summary is just to show you where we're kind of starting in FY '25. The FY '26 as written is the revised warrant amount based on the bonded projects being, the cost of the bonded projects being included. And the FY '26 adjusted is the amount that we anticipate if everything passed as written, and we made that adjustment to the operating budget of the $32.16 million. 25.1 would be assessed through taxation. So the apportionment formula, we just had a meeting last week to confirm and make a slight adjustment to the definition of capital, and as a result, the distribution of the elements to the apportionment formula are as follows. So they are estimated, of course. As we're looking to FY '26, We would be estimating, the ADM estimate is based on the close of the prior year, so based on the distribution of students at June 30 of the prior year. So we'd be estimating 54.7% of the students from Hollis, 45.3 from Brookline. Again, equalized value is in arrears, so we could have an estimate in there at 68.3 for Hollis, 31.7 for Brookline. Calculates to a net apportionment of about 55-45, and once each district receives its aid, the net tax effort distribution of the budget would be 56% Hollis and about 44% Brookline. So this is to putting all those percentages into actual numbers. These is as indicated, estimated, and based on the adjusted budget. We would start with the 32.162 million for the total, reduced by co-op revenue. And at that point, the 30.5 million is where we would apply the apportionment formula, which results in just under 17 million being apportioned to Hollis, 13.5 million apportioned to Brookline. Each community then has that amount reduced by state aid, both adequacy and the statewide education property tax, yielding tax effort of just under 14.2 million for Hollis and about 10.9 million for Brookline. These are estimates. There are several factors which will affect the net result, including the valuation in the communities, final revenue elements, the final calculation of state aid. But with the data that we have now, these are the estimates that we're putting forward that would result in an estimated co-op local tax rate of $6.08 per thousand for Hollis, $9.36 per thousand in Brookline. As indicated, that would be a 7.4% increase in the local co-op tax rate for Hollis, 8.2% in Brookline. Because the local co-op tax rate represents a portion of the tax bill, the net change, that 7 and 8% aren't the percentage increases in your final bottom line total tax bill. That would be, on the Hollis side, the co-op represents about 32% of the total. So the impact this has on the total tax bill is 2.4%. And in Brookline, the co-op represents about 38% of your tax bill. And that would equate to about a 3.1% increase in taxes.
Darlene, do you have a slide that shows that without based on FY '26 non-adjusted or something? I guess the question is there something that's gonna come up that will show what happens if Article 1 fails?
I do have a view of the operating budget both ways.
Okay.
That's coming up. Okay. So does anyone have any other questions at this point? From either board? Okay. So at this time, I'll take, we have to motion to go into recess as a board, and then we.
Yeah, we already did that. We're in
Okay.
recess now.
So I'll take a motion from the budget committee to recess to conduct the public hearing. Moved by Dave Flynn, seconded by Raul. We do have to have a roll call vote, so that would be Brian.
Yes.
Okay, Dave,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
Tom Whalen, yes. Tom
Yes.
Enright, yes. Matt McGuire,
Yes.
I didn't have that on my chart. Tom Solon, yes, and Darlene votes yes. So with a vote of, what does that give us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0, the budget committee stands in recess. Okay, so at this point, I will, open the public
Yes.
hearing at 6:46 PM. Just give me 1 minute. And share the rules for this evening's minute, the purpose and rules for the public hearing. So the purpose of the public hearing tonight is to introduce articles with stated financial impact to be voted on at district meeting. will be accepting public input per article. After the public hearing of the articles, both the Budget Committee and school boards will deliberate and take positions on the articles. The amount of the budget article may be amended by the Budget Committee, and the 10% maximum allowable appropriation limits the maximum appropriation which may be recommended at district meeting. The rules for giving public input. Input is restricted to Hollis Brookline residents of legal voting age. We would make an exception, of course, for administration and others as necessary for clarification. We will be requesting input on a per article basis. We'd ask that you state your name and address for the record and direct questions to the chair. There's a speaking time of 2 minutes, which cannot be yielded. We do have a timekeeper for this evening. If you do ask a question and you're waiting for an answer, your time will be stopped. You'll have the answer to your question and you can continue. Or you can ask all your questions up front and then just wait for your answers. That seemed to work at last week's meeting when some folks did that. You may speak to an article again after all others have had an opportunity to do so, and ask that you be brief if your point has been made by others.
Do you want me to do some reading? You're good.
I'm good so far, I think. Oh, no. Whatever you want to, Holly.
No,
So-
you do you, and then if you need a break, you just tell me,
Okay.
okay?
Start. I remember the year I did this with laryngitis, that was fun.
I do too.
Okay, so the original, I will not read this portion into the record. This was the original article language that addressed using a 20-year lease purchase agreement. Since that is not what's moving forward, I'm sharing it because it was discussed. It's been part of minutes of both the Budget Committee and the school board, so people may recognize it from either, looking at data that's on the website. It included a authorization for $5,291,200 project, in which the lease amount was $440,929. So what we will be reviewing and discussing, and again, which will be also brought up at the public hearing on the 13th as the official public hearing for the bonds, is the language as follows. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,291,200 gross budget for the design, acquisition, and installation of energy conservation equipment, HBMS boilers, controls, LED lighting, and other end-of-life rooftop units, and related building improvements at Hollis Brookline Middle School, parenthetically the project, to authorize $5,291,200 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes in accordance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33. To authorize the school board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes, and to determine the date, maturities, interest rate, and other details of such bonds or notes, and to authorize the school board to apply for, accept, and expend any federal, state, or private funds that may become available in respect of the project, to reduce the amount that must be bonded, or to pay debt service on such bonds or notes, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $132,280 for the first year's principal and interest payment on the bonds or notes issued. 3/5 ballot vote required. Neither the board or budget committee have taken votes to made recommendations at this time. We'll do so later. The estimated tax impact of the project as written is 3 cents per thousand in Brookline and 5 cents per thousand 3 cents per thousand in Hollis and 5 cents per thousand in Brookline. So at this point, I'll ask Superintendent Corey to give an overview or share some information about the project itself, and then he'll speak to the changes in the financing arrangement.
Sure. The project for the middle school entails the upgrading of boilers and install new propane tanks. So we'd be converting from oil to propane, which would increase our buying power with the town of Brookline, the town of Hollis, the Hollis School District, the high school, and if this were to pass, the middle school, all being run propane, which gives us a significant volume to bid each year. It would also be an upgrade to our LED lighting, which we expect about a 2-year useful life, and that is for specific reasons around, we do envision the rebates that are eligible going away in the foreseeable future. That's what
Excuse me.
legislative bodies are telling us.
Andy, you said 3-year useful life.
I said 2 years.
I said 2 year, and I meant
That's a payback, isn't it?
no, it's the 2 years before the rebates would go away.
Oh, but it's not that the lighting's only useful for 2 years.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that, to clarify, thanks, Tom.
Also, an upgrade to the control system. We would be adding mechanical ventilation and dehumidification, which we presently don't have. We installed it a few years at the high school, and it has changed the educational environment in a very positive way. We would also be upgrading 1994 unit vent area energy recovery ventilators with dehumidification. Those are presently basically at their end of life. We would also be upgrading 2 heat recovery ventilators, and those items, when combined, give us a total of $5,291,200. The Facilities Committee started work last July and came forward with this recommendation to both BudCom and the school board. They also looked at replacing our units from 2002 and doing something to our cafeteria ventilation system. Those 2 items were delayed and taken out of this project to bring the cost down to the $5,291,200. We would expect grants or rebates to offset the initial cost of $85,000, and we project an energy savings at the middle school of $53,570 on an annual basis. The reason for the change in financing, periodically each quarter, the New Hampshire Bond Bank comes out with rates. They released new rates about mid to late January, and all of a sudden there was a significant difference between the lease and the New Hampshire Bond Bank. So by going from the lease to the bond that we're proposing now, the difference in total interest was $1,367,176 that we would be saving because of the lower interest rate. So at that point, in conferring with the business manager and the assistant superintendent, we felt it was needed to make this change and move forward with this article as a bond.
Okay,
I
thank you.
believe we have to make a motion to amend the article, don't we? That's what I have.
Yep.
That would be, my team would have to do
Yep.
that, right?
Yes.
During the
Okay.
hearing?
Well, we're not
at the
doing,
end.
Okay.
we're not doing that
Okay.
right now.
So it's in the hearing.
No, we should be, it would be, should be
Okay.
public. When we go back to the,
Just wanna make sure we know what we're doing.
So at this point, I'll entertain any public input on Article 1 for the middle school energy conservation project. So if anyone in the audience would like to make any comments, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and we'll take your input.
Good evening. My name's Eric Power. I live on Westview Road in Brookline. And I'm happy to see that this is now a bond versus a lease. I think the leases are very expensive, and I think finally somebody noticed, and that's very good. I do have a concern. I mean, I heard about the changing over to propane. You know, propane versus oil. Oil is less expensive from what I can see, but maybe from the buying power of it, if you have all your other facilities on propane, it might make sense. And I don't know that. Maybe the superintendent or someone can quantify that a little bit. And the other request I would make of the school board and/or budget committee, the one thing you see when you do a bond is you don't see the second year payment. So when somebody thinks it's like in Brookline, it's 5 cents per thousand the first year, it actually goes up like 3.5x the second year. So it would be in the transparency there to let folks know it's not going to be a nickel after the first year. It's going to probably go up to whatever 3.5 times that is. It's probably more like 20 cents per thousand in Brookline and probably something equivalent in Hollis. So I would ask that that be put forward so people know what they're paying for. I think this is a much more responsible way. I don't know if I'll vote for it, but I definitely like the fact that we're going to save interest rates versus these leases. I think leases are, with these escape clauses, are are not the best idea because you're paying for a premium to have an escape clause that you can't actually escape from. So the bond is a much better deal, but people do need to know the tax impact. If they don't know about the second year, I think it's important that that's presented to the public before they vote. And Superintendent, I don't know if you can answer that question, or someone, Chair, who can answer the question about the trade-off between oil and propane, given the buying power and the cost of oil versus propane.
That comprised your whole 2 minutes, Mr. Powell.
The buying power is, you're correct on that. That's why we're able to get such a good deal, because we're talking the entire propane order for both towns, the Hollis School District, the high school, and now the middle school. So it has resulted in a very strong buying power, and our rates have been more than competitive.
Can I just speak to that point? 'Cause I brought up that question myself because I was looking at comparing the cost for BTU, and the oil seemed cheaper, and then when I found out the rate that we'll be able to buy, because there's so little oil being bought in the community now by the school district, the pendulum has swung completely, and the cost advantage is dramatic. Nothing that you or I can get at home right now.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, to address your concern about transparency and additional information, what we traditionally do at the meeting when we are proposing long-term financing of any kind is to show the exact impacts that you were talking about at the March meeting. So we'll have a chart that shows the cumulative debt of the district over time, as well as the tax impacts on a going-forward basis.
You're saying you're going to show the tax impact per thousand for the outgoing years? Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Mason,
Mason?
Baxter Road, Hollis. You'll excuse me for what may be a naive question. Is it possible to obtain boilers that can be switched back and forth between fuel sources? And is that something we thought about, or is it just you're going to have to buy a whole new boiler?
It's not so much the boilers as the fuel supply system that can't be switched back and forth.
Okay.
Much of this is being driven by the need for us to remove our current storage systems. They are no longer in compliance. So the question was, do we replace them with new oil storage or switch? The cost advantages of the propane drove the choice to propane.
Yep.
Even, I don't know if the boilers don't change. What happens is the firing units for the would change, which
Yeah.
is a relatively small portion of the overall cost. But what would be very expensive is to have both types of fuel storage systems.
So at some point, it might be economically viable to switch as the prices of the commodities change, but you don't anticipate that.
Well, the forecast isn't for that, and as we move forward, and the idea of having an electrical-based system due to renewable sources and have the propane become a backup, there are other mechanical reasons. Propane systems do better often when they're not being used as far as being able to restart. There's other things as well, but in theory, the boilers could operate fired by either propane or oil, if that's your question.
Well, again, it's a naive question. I don't know enough about the
Yeah.
different
No,
pieces to, but,
It's a great question. The answer isn't black and white, but the infrastructure itself is not fuel specific as far as I understand.
We also gain the ability to have redundant systems, so those boilers would be load sharing with this new install. Currently, we don't have that. So if one boiler goes down, half the school freezes out. The other half stays warm.
right, okay,
And everyone goes to that one half.
right. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no one else rising to make any comment, I'll close public input on Article 1 and move to Article 2. which is, again, originally, as brought forward, would have been a 15-year lease on $2,216,155 with a payment of $220,639. That will be changing to the following. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,216,155 gross budget for the design, acquisition, and installation of energy conservation equipment, solar panels, and related building improvements at Hollis Brookline Middle School and Hollis Brookline High School, parenthetically, the project, to authorize $2,216,155 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes in accordance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33, to authorize the school board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes, and to determine the date, maturities, interest rate, and other details of such bonds or notes, and to authorize the school board to apply for, accept, and expend any federal, state, or private funds that may become available in respect of the project, to reduce the amount that must be bonded or to pay debt service on such bonds or notes, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,404 for the first year's principal and interest payment on the bonds or notes issued. 3/5 ballot vote required. School Board and Budget Committee will make recommendations later this evening. The estimated tax impact of the FY26 payment is $0.01 per thousand in Hollis and 2 cents per thousand in Brookline. Superintendent Corey.
Again, the Facilities Committee investigated solar. We were originally looking at a solar field to be on the property, and that was the direction we were moving in until we spoke to our electric company as part of our research and realized that there would be an additional $1.5 million in costs related to a new substation that would have to be put in for us to gain the benefit of the selling of the electric back to the company. At that point, we moved from a ground-mounted system to look at our roofs, similar to what we've done in the Hollis schools. We have proposed in this warrant a roof-mounted system that will provide an annual savings at the high school of $84,474, which will save 69% in electric use, and have approximately a 10.9 to 11.5 payback over the life of the system. The system itself is eligible for a 25.5% cost rebate, so the cost to us would be $1,290,911, and the federal offset would be $329,182, which gives us a cost for the high school solar system of $961,729. Moving over to the middle school, the roof-mounted system would have an annual savings of $57,729. We would get 77.6% of our electric usage and have it about 10.8 years approximately for a payback. Neither of the paybacks factor in the cost escalation for future energy costs. So the initial system at the middle school would be $925,244. After tax benefits, that 25.5%, which would result in $235,937 coming back to the districts, the net cost would be $689,307 for a solar array on the middle school roof. And again, going back to the interest rates, the same thing occurred here. A $2,216,155 bond from the New Hampshire Bond Bank for a 15-year term came out at 3.59%. That would give us the payment of the $55,404 in the first year. The interest difference and why we're switching from a lease to a bond is in interest savings, we would have $446,644. So between the two projects going from leases to bonds, if they were both to pass, the interest difference that we would save would be $1,813,820. Now I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Can I just ask for clarification on one of the things? The bond has to be for the full amount before the rebate, And since we can't prepay on a bond, what happens to that money?
The rebates come back in and
Is it like a
can,
credit towards?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Are the microphones running?
The
Yeah, but
microphones, yes, they're recording for the live stream.
they go to
for
the
purposes of
live stream. They're not for this room.
Is there a way to do it so we can hear what you're saying over there?
We don't have speakers anywhere here.
Okay. Susan Haight from Brookline. I have a question about this proposal. Do you have a solar company in mind?
We had a consultant that worked with us that has done work in Hollis and in Brookline, EEI. But if the bond was passed, we are required to go out to bid.
Okay, and what guarantee do we have that any company that we might select does not file Chapter 11 or Chapter 7? And if the system fails, what guarantee do we have that it will be replaced, fixed, or removed?
As part of the due diligence process, the Facilities Committee investigates anybody who submits a bid, because it's not simply taking the lowest bid. It's the most qualified bidder that can deliver the project. We have experience because we've done this in Hollis. Those systems have been in place for a number of years now and are running very efficiently. We've actually even taken one of the systems off, put in a new roof, and put the system back on using the vending company. I don't anticipate a company going bankrupt, but it could. I mean, I can't foresee that. But I have found that the solar companies that have expressed interest are very reputable companies, and I would doubt very much that they would abandon a project because they would unlikely to get any other business in New Hampshire from a school district or a town side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Tony Stanizzi from, how you doing? Tony Stanizzi from Hollis, 201 South Merrimack Road. My concerns are basically looking at anything like this as an investment, and with any investment, you look for return on that investment. And I have a couple of questions really regarding this whole process and with specifics to the return on investment. The cost of each panel plus installation and also removal has to be considered in the cost. I don't know if removal has, but at the end of its life expectancy, it will have to be removed. The cost of removing can be anywhere between a few $100s and $500 per panel. I don't know how many panels we have, but it's, I think, important to have that added to your return on investment calculation. In the return on investment calculation, it's not a fixed number. It's a very flexible number, and it has to do with the cost of energy at any given time. If the cost of energy comes down, the return on investment time period will be affected inversely by that. So if the cost of energy dropped in half and the return on investment is 20 years, given the cost of energy, the return on investment could be 40 years. So I want to be very careful, and I want to have that information regarding the return on investment. There are a lot of things relative to whether you bond, whether you take a capital lease and all that sort of thing. That's the interest part, the cost of the financing. I'm sure you have all of those calculations in place, but with the key to my question is the return on investment, and I'd appreciate it if anyone has any of those answers. If not, you should have the answers by the time the warrant meeting comes about, because I think the town needs to know, both towns need to know, what's the return on what the money that we're spending.
Thanks, Tony, that's your 2 minutes. That's your 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Just to give you some answers, We did not factor in the removal 25 years from now into the return on investment. We have approximately just under 11 years for return on investment at a straight rate, so no inflation of energy costs. I haven't seen energy costs go down, so I'm really looking for them to fall halfway. I've seen them go the other way, so I think our payback would actually be less. We had projected about 11-year payback in Hollis. The return on investment came in a little under 8 years. Yep.
Base it on a cost of oil per barrel, because that's just kind of a fixed cost of energy. And I can remember not too long ago it being $130 per barrel. Currently, it's around $80 to $90 per barrel, and it's been as low as about even in the high 20s per barrel. So somewhere in between, there's a likelihood that the cost of energy could go down and then adversely affect the return on investment time period. So, just
Thank
basically
you.
a concern,
Good point.
and I think
Thank
it
you.
needs to be addressed.
Thanks.
Okay, now let's go.
I have a question. Can I ask, or do
No.
I need to go to the,
No question for you.
You can
Okay.
ask your questions later.
all right, I'll ask later.
Write it down.
Really runs.
One way to go.
My name's Eric Power from Westview Road in Brookline, and I'm against this warrant article. We've seen tax increases that have been very high recently. This is definitely a nice-to-have category. There are a lot of questions. I agree with the previous speaker about return on investment. We heard some verbal stuff here, but we haven't really seen anything concrete. Obviously, there's a lot of assumptions that go into that. I'm an engineer, so I like to see the numbers, and I like to see the assumptions. I do think it's much wiser, if this is to be done, to be doing it with a lease versus, to do it with a bond versus a lease. And another thing, another tool that's out there, and I don't know if it was considered, but it kind of reduces the risk on the payback, is to look at an energy performance contract. You know, the energy performance contracts guarantee a certain savings over time. Under RSA 21I, Section 19D, those are very powerful things that are maybe a better way to do it than actually buying it, hoping that it works out, and then hoping you get the savings. I think there's another option there that I don't know if it was explored or not. Maybe somebody can answer that when I'm done speaking. I see this as sort of a Green New Deal. You think it's a good deal, but I don't think that it could pan out. And also, it's not really the good time when we have all these other large expenses. If you want to pass a $5 or $6 million bond to help with the middle school, we have rising costs. We still have declining enrollment. This isn't the time to do this sort of project, in my opinion. And I don't know that it's been thought through, and I don't know if all the options have been explored. Can somebody answer the question about energy performance contracting?
It was a great question, Eric, and we raised that specifically. The decision to go this route was based on that current 25.5% rebate, and that was the tipping point. The performance contracts right now, the overall savings was not as great. If this rebate is available and the project goes through, the overall cost ended up being lower, because the way those performance contracts work is it assumes you're going to you pay at the higher rate, essentially till you've paid it off, and then you get the benefit back in later years. When looking at the calculations over the expected life of the panels, as well as the near-term costs, that 25.5% immediate refund was clearly the advantage, and the contracts that you've talked about, while this rebate has been in place, have somewhat fallen out of favor. If that rebate does disappear, then the performance contract then becomes the preferred method and would likely be there. It's not shown in here because this just shows what you're spending, but what the facilities committee was really looking for is that this be essentially cost neutral to the taxpayer. The goal was that the expenditures versus the savings that would be achieved real time would net out to have a close to no budgetary impact. It's not an exact thing because you don't know where the usage is going to be, but two things play into it. One is the cost factors alone. The other is pairing this with the Article 1 activities, because the Article 1 activities can leverage the use of electric power in certain areas, which would be lower cost if we're in a environment where we have solar offset. The nice thing about the solar is that in a net metering environment, we get to bank the money during the summer when we're not when our energy consumptions are very low and the yield is very high. So it's not the same thing as an off-grid kind of calculation, but the question that you asked about the cost of operations, what's the real cost to it? Is it a nice to have, or is it a need to have? Yes, it's a nice to have, but we also believe that it's fiscally nice to have, because the belief is that in the short term, during the payoff period, the budget impact will be low to none, and that subsequent after payoff, it all becomes direct savings. I don't know who's got the best stuff. I think Mike at EEI has the best information for that, but if we can get that, how that evaluation was made, I think it would go a long way to answer your questions.
Yeah, if there was an analysis that we paid for or worked with, that would be nice to put up on the website so we could take a look at it to see.
Yep.
I could be convinced if I see better
Yep.
numbers, but right now I'm kind of against it because I don't really understand
Yep.
the differences.
Yep.
So, and I also think maybe with the new presidential administration and everything, energy prices will be going down at least for the next 4 years, so that'll extend the time. But that's a big question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Hubbard. I live at 90 Moore Hill Road. I'm just having a
I'm
look.
sorry, in Hollis or Brookline?
Oh, in Hollis, thank you. I'm just reading here through the Boston Globe that with the tariffs that are going to be coming on from the electricity that's imported from Canada, which is estimated to be about 10% of New England's electricity, cost of the energy that comes in from Canada is going to go up by 10%, at least due to these new tariffs that are coming in. So I understand that the hope is that energy would go down, but I'm not certain that it will. And so I think becoming more energy independent makes us more flexible and able to provide for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one rise to the microphone, I'll close public input on Article 2 and move to Article 3, the operating budget. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $31,160,427 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. This appropriation does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. Majority vote required. The school board and budget committee will take their positions later. The estimated tax impact to Hollis is $6.02 per thousand, and Brookline $9.25 per thousand. So this is the impact and calculation of the article as it's written. As I indicated earlier, assuming the other articles pass, the budget itself is overstated by $915,000. So if Article 1 were to pass, when this budget is brought to the floor, there will be an amendment to it to reduce it by $915,000. That was the, I'll explain what that $915,000 comprises shortly. In the event that the $30,245,427 is brought to the floor, the impact would be $5.83 per thousand in Hollis and $8.95 per thousand. I just realized the typo there on the impact per 100,000, which instead of 817 should read 895, and that will be corrected when this presentation gets posted to the website with the recommendations of each of the committees. So the impact for Brookline would be $895 per 100,000, not 817. Let's see. So as, just to give you a little bit of overview and highlights of the operating budget, as indicated, as written, the percent increase over the current budget that the schools are operating under is a 6.3% increase, again, adjusted down 915,000. The projected increase would be 3.2%. The Budget Committee has a process that it begins in the fall and establishes a guidance metric for the school district, and the operating budget that's been submitted does fall below the guidance put forward by the Budget Committee by about $100,000. So if the $915,000 project were not in the operating budget, the Budget Committee would have revised its guidance downward, and the budget would have still fallen $100,000 below the guidance that it put forward. In broad categories, there are some staff and FTE increases, two for student services for an in-district provider, in addition to a board-certified behavior analyst. There are academic items for classroom equipment and textbooks. There are technology purchases for phasing of Chromebook, laptop, and flat panels, and some updates to the firewall security. And for maintenance and safety items, there are ongoing phased approaches to paving across the district, flooring, ductwork, window replacements, painting, ceiling tiles, speed bumps, and things like that. So the $915,000 that I mentioned is included in the total amount and represents, for lack of a better word, the baseline changes that need to be implemented in the middle school for the boiler upgrades. So that is what represents the $915,000 and would be reduced if the original Article 1 were to pass. From an increases and decreases perspective, the district is looking at an increase in benefits of almost 13% due to an increase in the guaranteed rate for insurance, which is 8.9%, an increase in dental insurance of 5%, and census changes, which result in additional staff taking benefits, and those staff members then, the amount of the buyout then decreases because those members of our staff are now taking benefits. In student services, there are program changes that will net a $660,886 in additional costs. We see increases of about $77,000 in athletics for field maintenance, uniforms, and various levels of equipment. There are new facilities items. We'll talk a little bit later about facilities expendable trust that basically addresses kind of the higher ticket or more expensive items. The $301,500 includes expenses that are generally, I don't want to say they're lower ticket, but because they're still expensive, but they're the items that the project costs are just, more in the, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 range individually. The paving might be a little bit higher, but it isn't the scope of some of the things that we'll be discussing later. So that $301,500 represents projects in each school for paving various elements of the parking lot, putting in and fixing and speed bumps, ductwork, phasing in window replacements, classroom painting, ceiling tiles. Those are all elements that are kind of phasing over time so that any one budget isn't inundated with costs on any or all of those categories. The other new items of $384,555 spread across academic programs, classroom furniture and equipment, a revised stipend structure for our staff, some software upgrades in addition to safety changes. Replacement computers are, this is the continuing of a phase-in approach to replacing Chromebooks, laptops, and interactive flat panels. It has been a year-over-year replacement cycle. What we're looking for in FY '26 is a reduction of the prior year's amount by almost $34,000. There's savings of $588,000 in building and grounds because of high school projects that were completed in this year, which are not going to carry forward into the next budget. And we see a reduction in staff retirements of a little over $65,000. At this time, I'll invite individuals to provide their comments on the operating budget or ask their questions.
Good evening, Erica McDonald, Trill Road in Hollis. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the student services, what program changes are being suggested for $660,000.
So these are either student-specific or in-district program changes. I can't go into too much detail. There are some program placement pieces that are involved in this cost change.
Okay. And what is the difference between the facility maintenance trust and the facilities charges that are here in the operating budget?
So the facilities maintenance trust, it's an amount of, we usually keep it around $300,000, and as I mentioned, it's usually paid for like larger ticket items or items we're saving for. So we'll discuss this as we get to that article. Those items are including like the roof replacement, some items for elevators, so they're a little bit more expensive, and we do try to put some money in there as a savings element in addition to funding those larger ticket items. I could just, if you give me 1 second, the facilities items that we're looking at for the middle school, the $301,500 include, they're $20,000 in middle school window replacements, $18,000 for new padding in the NPR, $3,000 phase 2 ceiling tile replacement, $10,000 phase 2 duct work, paving of the front lot. That one is $80,000. It's a little bit higher priced than many of the other items. Electric panel replacement of $15,000, a $4,500 water bottle filling station, and $20,000 in flooring at the middle school. The high school includes $6,000 worth of cabinetry, $3,000 for phase 2 painting, phase 2 ceiling tile replacement for $3,000, classroom flooring, phase 1, $20,000, grounds maintenance vehicle for $15,000, restroom dividers, phase 2 for $10,000, ductwork cleaning, phase 1 for $10,000, phase 2 of hand dryer replacement for $5,000, 2 water bottle filling stations for $9,000, and about $50,000 in front and rear parking of the paving of the driveway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Eric Power, Westbury Road and Brookline. I think this operating budget's a little too high. I'm not that happy with it going up. If you look at what's been happening over the past 7 years, we've lost about 11 or 12% of the students, but the budget keeps going up. The other thing I'm concerned about is if you look at our proficiency scores, we have this most recent year, we have 38% of our 7th graders that are not proficient in math, 35 in 8th grade, and 40% in 11th grade. I'm very concerned with that. We spend a lot of money. We have 40% of our seniors or 11th graders not proficient in math. We're doing better in reading. In the 7th and 8th grade, however, we're at 30% that are not proficient and 11% in 11th grade. And in science, we have 49% in 8th grade that are not proficient and 48% in 8th and 11th grade. So that's about half the students are not making proficiency, but we're spending $30 million. So I get concerned about that, and I'm not happy with the rise in all the different stipends that are out there. We need to get back to the basics. we need to get back to getting proficiency in math, reading, and science instead of all these extra things. Spending more money on sports is not the right thing to do. Maybe the Booster Club can help there, and maybe they are helping, but we can't keep paying that with the declining enrollment. This budget is just getting too large, too fast, and I'm not going to support it. I would like to see lower budget when the student enrollment goes down, and it's just not sustainable for the average taxpayer to be spending this amount of money and having these kinds of scores. Yeah, they might be better than the state average, but the state average isn't great. So that's my concern, and I hope that you can find some ways, Budget Committee, to take a look at lowering this budget a little bit before you approve it. Thank you.
Seeing no one else rise to the microphone, I'll close public input on the operating budget and move to the support staff contract to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items for the first year of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board and the Hollis Education Support Staff Association for the 2025-26, 2026-27, and 2027-28 school years, which calls for the following increases in support staff salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. For fiscal year 2025-26, estimated increase $133,419. And further, to raise and appropriate a sum of $133,419 for the first fiscal year 2025-26 school year. Such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in support staff salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote required. The School Board and Budget Committee will make recommendations later this evening. The estimated tax impact for Hollis is 3 cents per thousand, and Brookline is 5 cents per thousand.
I'll just give a brief description of this contract and what happened during negotiations. We had a great negotiation. Most of the changes in the contract are language changes that were made to keep up with the changes that we have in order, and also to try to keep our contracts a little bit more consistent with both the Brookline HESA and the Hollis HESA. We kept our insurance caps for our contract this year. This contract is a 3-year contract. It is not standardized. The increase for the $133,000 is a 2.75 increase from the previous salary table for the on-step people, and it is a 3.4% increase for the off-step people. And then our caps went up also. The single went up $93, the 2-person went up $164, and the family went up $291.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone has any input on the support staff contract, please come to the microphone.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, Hollis, and moderator of the district. Has the school board considered adding a contingent article in case this one fails? Anyway, it's an option available to the school board. It's up to you.
I don't think we generally have done that for the support staff contract.
Okay.
But thank you for the thought and the reminder.
I will be a champion. I will be a champion.
Eric Power, Westview Road in Brookline. I appreciate that this is not Sanbornized. I think that's really the best way to go on all contracts, and I like that part of it. I couldn't quite hear what the numbers were, and also if this CBA will be put on the website so that voters can read it. I like to get it and look at it before the meeting. Is this already available on the website, or can it be?
No, it's already there.
It's already, is it under the annual meeting area?
No, it's under,
Human resources.
contracts. It's in a collective bargaining. Yeah, it's in a box, it says.
I don't know, I
line
couldn't
contract.
find it then if I was looking for it, but,
It's with all the other collective bargaining agreements.
okay, I'll have to take a look.
I'll reiterate the increases that Mrs. Whalen identified were a 2.75% salary table increase for those on step and a 3.4% increase for those off.
So those that are on step, when they get the step increase plus the step, what do they actually get on average,
It's about a 4% increase, 4 to 5% increase.
depending on where they are in the table?
Right.
But do they move on all the steps? I thought some of them, they move, are they yearly steps?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
How many steps are on this table?
9.
9?
Okay.
Oh, you're correct.
Did you even?
There are 9 steps.
9 step. How many categories were there?
5.
Has it been that way in the co-op?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 5, yeah.
Maybe I'm confusing that with Brookline.
Brookline has 8 or 9 different categories, yep.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else rise to provide input on Article 4, I'll close Article 4, and we'll move on to Article 5, the SAU budget. Shall the district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,171,278 as the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District's portion of the SAU budget of $2,438,355 for the forthcoming fiscal year? This year's adjusted budget of $2,389,654 with $1,147,885 assigned to the school budget of this school district will be adopted if the article does not receive a majority vote of all of the school district voters voting in the school administrative unit. Both boards will take their positions later this evening. The estimated tax impact is 28 cents per thousand in Hollis and 44 cents per thousand in Brookline. This article is an opportunity where people get to vote twice. The votes are combined across Hollis, the votes have taken in Hollis, the Hollis School District, the Brookline School District, and the co-op. In each district's article will identify the different amount that would be approved for their district. So for the co-op, it's the $1,171,278. Percentage of the total. There's an apportionment formula applied to it. And as we look toward the increase, which is in total about a $3,000 change, the primary drivers, this budget really represents the support staff of the central office and the administrators that work there. So it is very much, I think 93% of the budget is salary and benefit driven. And we see a $12,000 increase in salaries projected for FY26, which includes 4% increases for staff and savings as we, we'll see a salary savings as we turn over from Superintendent Corey to Superintendent Bergskog moving into FY26. And from a benefit perspective, while health insurance rates are increasing by 8.9% and dental by 5%, we see a slight decrease in benefits of $5,000 due to census changes of the staff and how they're taking benefits. Hi, could you provide your name again?
Susan Haight from Brookline. Just sort of an informational question for a lot of people that might be watching that don't understand how this SAU budget comes about. I don't recall that we've ever had a public hearing, and I don't know who establishes what this budget is, but this has probably been a thorn in my side for a long time as I've seen this budget go up and up and up and up, and I don't know how we can control it.
Okay, so the governing board is comprised of members of all school board members can keep me honest, of all school board members. They assign a treasurer who's appointed treasurer who is involved in the budget development process, and the SAU budget subcommittee includes members of each school district each budget or finance committee, in addition to members of the administration. It's a process that takes place during the fall. There are meetings and information shared. As the drafts of the budget are developed, they are shared with each of the member groups at their public meetings. So for example, I was the representative for the co-op budget committee, and when that draft was put forward, I brought it to my board. I shared the draft with the committee to provide input and comments, and brought those comments back to the subcommittee. So the same is done with the Hollis budget committee and the Brookline Finance Committee. There is a public hearing that takes place on this. It took place at the December governing board meeting. The presentation is posted on the website, and the meeting was probably December 12th, and the meeting was live streamed and is recorded.
So
Did I miss
there's,
anything?
no, it's the SAU governing board meetings is what you're looking for. If you're interested, that's what you need to look for. So each one of these boards, we're the Hollis Brookline Co-op Board, the Hollis School District Board, and the Brookline School District Board. We gather 4 times a year, quarterly. Well, technically not quarterly, but we gather 4 times a year as an entire 17-member board, and we always present the budget at the December meeting in a public hearing.
Great, thank you.
You want?
Eric Power, Westview Road, Brookline. I wanted to know how many people work, how many employees we have in the SAU right now. I've heard numbers of 17, 18, 19, I don't know.
17.
17?
19?
Are those FTEs or people?
What?
The FTEs or people?
Hmm?
People.
So everyone's full-time?
No.
No,
So which is,
we have 19 people. 2 of them are part-time, Kelly?
Yeah.
So 18 and a half people.
18 and a half people. Yeah,
18 and 3/4.
is there going to be an assistant superintendent hired, or has there been one hired?
We are in the interviewing process, and we intend to hire.
You intend to replace that? Okay.
Correct.
I get concerned about the SAU budget. It keeps going up and up rapidly. I do know how the process works. There's a vote by the SAU board, and I used to be a school board member, so I used to vote on that when I was on the school board back in 2014 to 2017. I don't like the process because it doesn't give the voters a lot of choice with the adjusted budget, the way it works. And I would hope, every time that the SAU board spends the money on the administration, that's less money that we can pay teachers and use in the school districts. And I think, you look at, we have, I don't know how many kids, 2,000 some kids in the whole SAU between the 3 school districts, and we're spending $2.4 million on this SAU office. That's, my last calculation is $1,200 or $1,300 for every student K to 12 that we're paying for this SAU office. Are we really getting the value that we need from this this structure? And I don't think so. That's my perspective. Not a lot we can do. The die gets cast on this mostly in December. You have a chance at an adjusted budget. I get to vote twice on it, Brookline and in the co-op, but I just don't like how fast this goes up. This is a big problem, I think, in the budget rising is this. This year we don't have that because we have a superintendent who's highly paid retiring, but it's something we need to keep an eye on in future years, whoever's on the school board. Thank you.
Your time, thank you.
5% less.
Right.
That's pretty good.
He's an ass.
Okay, seeing no other, seeing no one else rise for public input on the SAU budget, we'll move on to Article 6 for the Facilities Maintenance Expendable Trust, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $300,000 to be added to the previously established school building and facilities maintenance expendable trust. The sum to come from the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District's June 30, 2025 unassigned fund balance, available on July 1st, 2025. Majority vote required. Positions will be taken later. Since this item is being funded through unassigned fund balance, you would be foregoing a tax reduction of 7 cents per thousand in Hollis and 11 cents per thousand in Brookline. For the fund utilization that's projected for FY '26, we have $158,000 currently in the expendable trust. It's there in case there are, emergency repairs and things like that that are needed. In addition to, as you see, the first item listed for HBHS is year 2 for an elevator. So that $158,000 includes savings from the current year, in addition to an anticipated $68,000. And it's a method of saving for what's expected to be a very expensive elevator replacement project. So we have money, as I said, in that balance, and are anticipating putting an additional $68,000 aside to be able to fund that project later. We will be paying for phase 10 of the HBHS roof, which I believe is the last phase for the roof replacement. So that's for the high school. So that's been 10 years that we've been, or actually 11 or 12, because during COVID we shifted and I believe didn't do one of the phases. So it's been at least a decade that we've been replacing the roof at Hollis Brookline High School, and we'll be doing a $150,000 roof section at the middle school, and that would leave an ending balance of $160,069 projected. Is there any input on the facilities maintenance expendable trust?
You're good.
Seeing none, I'll move on to the contingency fund. Article 7, to see if the school district will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate up to $125,000 to go into the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance available on July 1st, 2025, and no amount to be raised from taxation. Any appropriation left at the end of the school year will lapse to the general fund. Majority vote required. Both board and committee will take their positions later. This is another area where you would be foregoing a tax rate reduction of 3 cents per thousand in Hollis and 5 cents for Brookline. This contingency article has been put forward for several years. It started before we were able to retain funds through a retained fund balance. This is where school districts and towns differ. When towns underrun a budget, they are permitted to hold anything that they've underrun the budget by and include that in an unreserved fund balance. That does not lapse. School districts don't have that opportunity. So between the $125,000 for this contingency, which does lapse, so if we don't use any of it, it does get returned to the taxpayer on an annual basis, or it moves to the unreserved fund balance, and what we do is pretty much reallocate it annually. School districts also don't have an opportunity to retain all of the amount that they may underrun a budget by. So there is specific article language in legislation that allows the district to retain a portion of its district assessment. The language is changed to allow a 5% maximum. It's not related to this contingency article. This district does not have maximum funding for that retained fund balance. And that is part of the reason why this contingency article is put forward in the amount of $125,000 annually. Seeing, is there any input on the contingency article?
Eric Power, Westview Road, Brookline. I want to know how much we get to retain dollar amount in the retained fund balance per the current authorization do we get each year? What's the maximum?
So we're allowed a maximum of 2.5% of the district assessment, so the amount does literally change every single year. It is approximately $500,000, but that's not the amount that the board sets aside. There is a motion made by the board annually to determine that amount, and I think this year it's at 340. So it's significant. It's under the maximum at this point.
So,
Very good.
given it's up to 500,000, is it really necessary to have this other $125,000 when you already get to put in $500,000 from year to year? That seems to be quite a bit of money that could be returned to the taxpayers.
So I would say the board, on a consistent basis, underfunds the retained fund balance, and this is another opportunity to help balance that.
Yeah, I'm
Not
not
to
really,
speak for the board, but-
I'm
No,
not
I
really
think-
in
I
favor
think
of this
the-
article because I think it's a lot of money and taxpayers can use the relief that they can. We already have the retained fund balance to be able to save $500,000. Do we need to have another 125 that could go back to the taxpayers? I think that makes a lot of sense.
I can speak to that. Just really quickly, I think one of the decisions we make by underfunding the reserved fund balance, retained fund balance, is to allow the taxpayers this choice. I think we try to work very transparently, and this is up to the taxpayers. So it gives them the opportunity to make that decision instead of us. So that's why we put it forth.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, and the voters get to choose whether we want to do this or not.
Absolutely, that's why it's here.
But the other aspect is when it gets funded, because with the warrant article, you know how the funding comes out of retained fund balance. This now gets put in because what's left over at the end of the year is sort of speculative, so it's two ways to take from the same pot. This is sort of like a default, becomes like a default minimum. And then what we have used and what we have available gets brought into the conversation on what we choose to then do with the authorized up to 2.5%. So they're taken in concert, but this, by being authorized, becomes a first cut at it.
So when there's the unreserved fund balance at the end of the year, if this passes at the district meeting, you would do 125,000. Then it's your option to go up to another 500,000, and you
Well,
choose that.
We have had it, and they sort of roll over on each other.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, Hollis. I know that, I seem to recall that the Hollis School District spends a lot of time agonizing over special ed and funding, reserve funding for it. How is that handled at the co-op? Because it doesn't seem to be showing up here.
We do have a similar fund as Hollis has, a special education trust fund. It's fully funded at this point, so we're not putting forward an article to add additional funding for it.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions with regard to the contingency article, I'll close the public input, the public hearing on the first 7 articles of the warrant at 7:54 p.m.
And that gets handed over to us, so I'm going to open a public hearing for the petition warrant articles at, what was it, 7:54 p.m. We're following the same rules, same structure that we've been following. The only difference is we won't be presenting on these petition warrant articles. These aren't our articles, they came to us by petition. If there's someone who's speaking to them, they're welcome to make a presentation tonight. So,
Is it presentation or just public input?
well, it's actually a little bit longer than public input because of, we're allowing the.
But who's the petitioner?
That's a good question, but we're gonna allow a petitioner to come up and speak to the public, to the petition warrant articles for however long they need, 5 to 6 minutes, yeah.
I'm just
So-
wondering
so
how
we're
you
not- so we've
determine
cha-
who's the petitioner.
So we've changed the rules for the annual district
Yeah.
meeting, and we're not allowing presentations from the moderator's not allowing presentations. But one of the things that the moderator asked the school board in our public meeting in October was to make sure that we gave people an opportunity to present information at this public hearing. So we are doing that tonight.
I understand that, but are they presenting it as petitioners, or are they presenting it as members of the public who are in support of it? Because that way more people can talk.
They won't know.
One person. One person's gonna present.
Okay.
First petition warrant article, Article 8. Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5 5-B, requiring that the annual budget and all special warrant articles having a tax impact as determined by the school board shall contain a notation stating the estimated tax impact of the article. The determination of the estimated tax impact shall be subject to approval by the governing body. Is there a person from the petition that wants to speak on this and present? No? Yes? Try to limit to 5 minutes? I'm going to. But thank you. I wasn't sure how to handle that.
Eric Power, Westview Road and Brookline, and I definitely support this warrant article. This warrant article is basically about transparency and making it more available to have the information on the tax impact for voters. So some voters, believe it or not, they'll look at a warrant and they'll just make a decision, just looking at the warrant, do I go to the meeting or not? And by having that tax impact on the warrant in one place, it makes a big difference so that people know the magnitude of what's being voted upon at the meeting. It's really, I think, an important thing. So the idea would be able to put, and in our case we have a co-op, so the tax impact's not equal between Hollis and Brookline, so you would expect to have a notation. If there's a tax impact, it would be so many dollars per thousand in Brookline and so many dollars and cents per thousand in Hollis. And that would be put on each warrant article, and it would be approved by the governing body, which is the school board. And in that case, that lets people know very transparently how much it's going to cost. And I realize that this information may be available today at this hearing. There's not a lot of people here. And it may be available at the district meeting, but people are busy people, and having this ability to have the tax impact on every warrant article, I think, goes a long way to having people understand what they're going to be spending on their tax bill. They complain about that. In Brookline, the co-op is the biggest piece of the property taxes for us. And that a lot of people want to know, how do we get there and how much does it cost? Where is all this money being spent? So if they have that on the warrant, they can see where it is, and it may even motivate people to be more involved by having it. We've had this warrant article passed in the Brookline School District, and we use it there, and people are very appreciative of it. We passed this same warrant article in our Brookline Town meeting last year because people want to know how much they're spending. There's actually some legislation this year to make it mandatory. We don't know if that's going to become law or not, but in any case, I think it's really important that, for transparency, that people can look at the warrant and see that information. It's not a whole lot of information. And people complain a little bit, well, it could change. Well, everything can change. So having at least an estimate there, it's not going to be off by a lot, hopefully. It should be pretty accurate. And with consultation with the Budget Committee, I think it's a very wise thing to inform voters and get people to understand how much they're going to be spending when they're at the meeting and also ahead of the meeting. And sometimes people can only go to certain parts of the meeting, so they would be able to prioritize what they're going to be voting on. So for those reasons, I urge the school board and the Budget Committee to recommend this article to the district meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Okay, seeing no one rise, I'm going to close the floor for public comment on petition article number 8 at 8 o'clock. Okay, so I'd like to refer petition warrant article number 9 to our attorney, Mr. O'Shaughnessy. Do you need me to read it, or are you good?
No, it's fine. It's written here. I can read it. Is it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was asked by the board to provide, actually asked to review the warrant every year, and inherent in that request is an analysis of the legality of the warrant articles and their writing, and in particular, I usually am asked to review the petition warrant articles to ensure that there's nothing procedurally irregular or problematic. When I reviewed this petition warrant article, I was it's a new thing. It's not very common for districts to have requests to form charter commissions on warrants. So I looked at it and I said, oh, that's new. And I took some time to review the statute and look at what the requirements are for forming what they call a home rule charter under RSA 49B. After reviewing that that process and reviewing the petition, I was able to determine that under the law, the petitioners didn't actually follow the appropriate procedure under state law. Admittedly, RSA 49B and the process for establishing a charter commission is complicated. It's a kind of an arcane law. I have some familiarity with it because I've worked on I've advised charter commissions in the past. So in a nutshell, I'll just kind of go through the history a little bit and give you a quick synopsis. The law that governs the establishment of a charter commission is really RSA 197(5)(b). It authorizes the school district to establish a home rule charter by following the procedures set forth in RSA 49B. I know it's going to sound like a lot of numbers and legally gobbledygook, but it does make sense. The procedures in 49B are really the requirements for establishing a charter commission. The statute says that upon the written petition of 25 or more voters, the school board, the municipal officers of the school board must submit the question of establishment of a charter commission to the voters as provided in this section. There are several requirements in the statute. First, the petitioners must submit a petition to the school board that contains the following prescribed language. So this is the part where, unlike a normal petition warrant article, when you're establishing a charter petition, there has to be a specific charter petition form that is supposed to say, and the law says, the petition shall read substantially as follows, quote, each of the undersigned voters requests the municipal officers to submit to the voters at the next municipal election the question of establishment of a charter commission to draft a municipal charter. The specific statutory provision is RSA 49B3, Roman numeral 2. The petition must be submitted by December 15th of the preceding year for school districts with an annual meeting in March. And finally, if the board receives a petition under 2 using that language, the board is required by law to place the question of establishment of a charter commission on the next ballot using that language. So there's a big step that was missed here. And so accordingly, the petition warrant article submitted by 45 signers on December 2nd was not, quote, in substantially the same form as the mandatory language in 49B3(2). They submitted a traditional petition warrant article using the language of the actual ballot question that the board was supposed to place on the warrant after the board received the proper form. This is a procedural, I think this is a material procedural defect, so the petition itself is not legally valid. I know this is a tough spot to be in. 99 out of 100 times I get a call or I review a warrant all across New Hampshire, and the general rule is unless there's something significantly illegal, you don't put a petition warrant article on a warrant. This petition warrant article is legally defective because the petition wasn't submitted properly. The Supreme Court has held that when adoption of a proposed article has no legal validity, the board is not, it's not improper for the, or inappropriate for the board to refuse to insert it on the warrant. It's not really, I don't think, just a pro forma issue, because the specific language demonstrates that the petitioners, when they signed the petition, understood that they were directing the governing body to submit to the voters at the next municipal election the question of a charter commission to, quote, draft a municipal charter. That intention isn't clear here. So when they signed the petition, they weren't signing language that said they understood that that was what they were asking the board to do. The legislature mandated this language using the substantially as follows language, and it is a fundamental part of the process of establishing a charter commission. I want to say this isn't, you know, when you're looking at procedural defects, there are minor procedural defects and material procedural defects. This is not what I view to be a minor. I think this is substantive because the language prescribed in the statute and the language in the petition warrant article are very different. There are two key differences here. I know I'm going into detail, but this is kind of a novel thing. First, the petition language up there does not reference that the question will be placed on the ballot in March, which is a requirement for the petitioners when they submit it to the board. And second, it doesn't say that the purpose of the Charter Commission is to draft a municipal charter. That's not up there either. So I think it's not immaterial, it's actually significant. Given those differences, the petition warrant article does not demonstrate that the 45 signers clearly understood what they were directing the governing body to do. So that's kind of my legal opinion on that, and I'm happy to answer questions if necessary. Thank you.
Sure, Tom.
The way this is worded, what I saw there is establishing official ballot voting. That's language that's very similar to SB2 language. Is this another way of creating SB2?
Yeah, I mean, I could back way up and sort of talk about charters in general.
But I mean,
towns have a choice where they can adopt different kinds of charters. School districts have the ability to adopt one kind of charter, and really it's an option for determining which votes will be submitted by official ballot, like an SB2 district, like which issues, which articles versus which articles will be discussed, deliberated, and voted on at the annual meeting. So it allows a commission to kind of bifurcate itself rather than SB2, which gives you a choice of either or. You can pick some that are voted on by ballot, pick some that are voted on at the annual meeting, and there's a lot more you can do, but that's essentially the effect.
so if a community voted to have SB2 and also voted to have a charter, who wins?
They're
both
different
on the-
forms of government. You pick, you can't have both at the same time.
But it sounds like by petition, you can, both can be requested on the same ballot.
Well,
At the
then
same
it's just
meeting.
like having multiple petitions on the same subject.
But what if they both pass?
Well, then you have to scratch your head and you talk to the lawyer.
So I'm just wondering, is there a hierarchy?
At this
That's
point,
when you
isn't
talk
it,
to the
doesn't-
lawyer.
doesn't
Honestly,
it really?
that's a really.
think
broad
this one is
question.
irrelevant.
Look in 49B or
Well,
4013 to see if they suggest
shouldn't be
The reason
which one is a priority article. But to my mind, if these pass, all that's passing, right, if this was a properly petitioned warrant article and it were on the ballot and they both passed, you'd have SB2 established for however long it's established, then you'd have a charter commission established to potentially draft a charter to put before the voters. If that charter were to pass, it would supersede SB2. That's how that would work.
The reason it says for the sole purpose of establishing official ballot, what I'm getting at is, what would someone who just read that think they're voting on? Because the reason for rejecting it, or saying it's not substantial.
No, the reason for rejecting it is not because this isn't the proper form of the question that is ultimately presented to the voters. This is the statutory language of a warrant article to ask about the establishment of a charter. The reason it's not valid is because the petitioners have to sign a specific kind of petition with specifically prescribed language in order to trigger the board's obligation to put this language on the ballot. It's a two-step process.
Okay.
It's not a typical petition warrant article. I would understand how anybody would get confused by that because it's not like spelled out super clearly. You have to kind of read it a couple of times to understand what it's requiring, but that's the process.
So if we were to allow this to continue to exist, puts the board at risk, doesn't it, for putting something forward that's inappropriate?
Well, that's all, I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, which I can share with the board, my position is the board is expected and required to follow procedures and law. You gotta follow the law. If the process for petitioning wasn't properly submitted, it's not valid, you don't put it on the warrant. I think, of course, if you don't follow the law, someone else will come in and say, why aren't you following the law? The other question it always raises whenever I'm doing an annual meeting, I don't like to influence the outcome of votes, but when you got a question like this that's presented and it wasn't validly petitioned, what is the legal effect of this passing? I don't know. Like it creates really an open question, and open questions like this create liability and risk. So,
So you're advising us to remove it from the,
Yeah.
from the warrant?
yes,
How do we do that? Do we need to vote to do that, or do we just,
it's your warrant, so I don't know what.
The school
current-
board votes.
I
on
know
the
we
warrant.
vote, but I'm
Let me
just,
answer the question. What status is the warrant in right now?
we're having a public hearing, and then we have
Have
to.
you voted to finalize the warrant and signed and
Did we
attested?
vote it? No, we did not,
No.
no.
Yeah. So your warrant's still,
It's
In
a
draft
work
form.
in progress.
yeah, so the final version of the warrant would not have that article, and that's the warrant you would sign and attest and discuss at the annual meeting.
So we'll talk about it when we get into deliberations.
And I have copies to share with the board.
Is there any public input on this?
Do we know when this article was submitted?
Yeah, it said in.
December
I think-
2nd.
Yeah, December 2nd.
Okay.
Yep,
It
which
met
met
the-
the timeline, like that's presumably why that they were submitted so early this year. I think we were all wondering, oh, this is early, great. It was in time, it just wasn't the right process.
Let me ask this question, which is evidently hypothetical.
Well, at this point, we're done. Like, we're gonna move on from this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Article 10. Petition warrant Article 10. Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 40:13, known as SB2, to allow official ballot voting on all issues before the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District on the second Tuesday of March? Question mark. 60% majority vote required. Sorry, that question mark threw me. Okay, at this point, I'll open the floor for public comment on petition warrant Article 10.
Tony Stanizzi, 201 South Merrimack Road in Hollis. I look at this as a political issue and not a budgetary issue. And I'm not sure if the board should be voting on a political issue. There's no dollars attached to this. This is not a budgetary item. And I would believe it's very important to not take a position on this. And I may be incorrect, but this is just a kind of an observation I'm making. Please comment and correct me on this if I'm wrong.
We generally
Thank
do
you.
take a position on this.
You do?
Yes, we have.
You have, but I'm asking if that's appropriate to just
But-
not take a position.
So the budget committee doesn't normally take a position. We take a position on it because it impacts how we govern. So,
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Since this isn't a school board article, do I make my comments now as a member of the public, or do I do it during deliberation?
it's really up to you. We are gonna take a position, so you can take if you'd like to make a comment as a member of the public, you can. You can also make a comment as a school board member as well.
There you go. You can do both.
I get to vote twice?
But you only get 2 minutes. You only get 2 minutes, Tom, at the microphone. And man,
Takes
we
him
are
longer than to get
actually
there.
actually started right now. You have 1 minute and 35 seconds.
Your time has expired.
Tom Soul on Shady Rock Road, Brookline, New Hampshire. I just want to point out to people that the current warrant article that we have for the co-op has something that's really unique and powerful, and that is we have a budget that includes an amount in it, and we have a warrant article to fund something with an extended pay period. And the option of approving the first article to bond something and then going into the budget and changing the budget accordingly and pull that amount out. As what you may hear during deliberation or you've heard before, we had to put the money into the budget to cover the must-have, which was $915,000 to do absolutely necessary repairs to the heating system in the middle school. But by incorporating that into the larger bond, we save money, we dramatically drop the cost of next year's budget and the overall tax impact, and we have the ability to pull that out. In an SB2 environment, you don't have that. So what you'd have to do is have the budget with the full amount in it to cover what was there, and the warrant article to fund the, what I consider more fiscally appropriate way of funding the HVAC improvements for the middle school. And you want both of them to pass, and then you've got an extra $1 million you got to pay for that year, with the hope that it doesn't get spent someplace else. SB2 does not leave you the option to have that flexibility. That to me is a real graphic illustration of why SB2 was not great for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Very nice.
Eric Power, Brookline, Westview Road. I did sign this petition. We've heard about SB2 before. It is something we use in our Brookline School District, and I think it's been successful. I think one of the major things that people don't like about the traditional meeting is it really doesn't let everybody come, because, yeah, everybody can come, but people have life things that happen. People have, sometimes the parents, somebody's got to stay home with the kids, so only one of the two parents can participate, the other one can't vote. You have people that are disabled, people that can't drive at night. You have people that serve in the military, as I did for many years, and I miss meetings because of that. You have people that travel for work. You have people that work second shift. We have people that work for fire departments. We have nurses. There's a lot of people that get disenfranchised by this annual meeting system that we have now. So SB2 provides, you get the deliberative session where you actually debate the articles and get them ready for the ballot. And then you have your all-day ballot voting where people get to vote on all the warrant articles on election day, which is very powerful. And you get a lot more people voting on the ballot than you do at a meeting. At a co-op meeting, we're usually in the 3, maybe 5% range. But in Hollis and in Brookline, we are usually in the 20 to 25% range where people turn out and vote. So when you have more people participating, there's more buy-in. People feel like they have their say. But if you can't make it to this traditional meeting, you don't have that say. Also, in the all-day voting, you have absentee voting available. And that's not available with the annual meeting. You can't, if you're not there, you don't have a say. So that's a big problem. This is a very good system. I think that, every article that you have on the warrant also gets voted upon, which is another advantage. And it gives you all-day voting. And we sometimes have done all-day voting for certain warrant articles, but it is a little bit challenging, but it is sometimes what we have to do. But it makes you extend your meeting in order to do that. So the idea about SB2, there might be people watching at home trying to understand it. We've talked about it at a few different years, and there's a lot of interest in passing SB2. It's not a perfect system, but I think it's a better system than we have today with the annual meeting, because I think more people can actually participate and they're not disenfranchised. And that's the primary thing I think it brings forth to the voters. And I think it also gives people a chance to fact check. Between the deliberative session, you have at least 30 days to look at what is on the ballot. And you have a chance to talk to others. You have time to deliberate it. You don't have to make a vote in the heat of the moment in order to determine what you want to vote on. So I think it's a lot more, it's a more modern process for today's busy world than the annual meeting and our annual meetings take a long time. Deliberative sessions are a lot faster. Our meetings last many hours and sometimes many days. And so I think if we went to SB2, that would be a different story. I think that we'd have more participation in a deliberative session, and I think we'd definitely have more people voting. So for those reasons, I hope the school board votes to recommend adoption of SB2 for the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment for petition warrant Article 10 at 8:21. Move on to petition warrant article 11. Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5-D and implement a budget cap whereby the school board or budget committee shall not submit a recommended budget that is higher than $27,000 per pupil cost times the average daily membership in residence of the school district as of October 1st of the year immediately preceding the proposed budget year, plus an annual increase for inflation using CPI-U for the Boston, Cambridge, Newton, Mass, New Hampshire area, published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics as of January 1st, requires a 3/5 majority of the school district. I will open the floor for public comment. If there's someone who wants to speak to this.
Eric Power, Westview Road, Brookline again. This petition warrant article talks about adopting a school district budget cap. It's a new law that was passed last year. I think it went into effect in October. And it basically, in the case now that we have a budget committee, this is statutory language. The budget committee is the one that gets limited on what they can recommend. And basically what it does is it puts a cap on the spending, and it's per student that you have in your district based on average daily membership and residence. And the way you figure out your cap is that you take that $27,000 and you multiply by your average daily membership from the October 1st number reported to the Department of Education, and that's your cap. And once you have that cap, then you hopefully stay under the cap in what you propose. But at the meeting, the voters can always override the cap. Every tax cap and budget cap in New Hampshire has to have an override mechanism. So if you want to override the budget cap that year with a 3/5 vote, you can exceed the budget cap for any warrant article that needs to be over that 3/5 over that budget cap for that year. And then you proceed to the next year. You adjust based on CPI-U, the local CPI-U. You adjust the $27,000 figure to account for inflation, and you look at your new number for average daily membership. You multiply those, and that becomes your budget cap for the following year. Same process is repeated year to year. So the whole idea of a school district budget cap is to provide some guidance to the budget committee and the school board on achieving a budget that's reasonable and inflation-based for the voters and the families of Hollis and Brookline. I think it's a very reasonable piece of legislation. It's enabling legislation that we should adopt. $27,000 is higher than we're spending right now, so it does give some headroom. And I think it's a very reasonable metric to, instead of having no limits and no guidance on the maximum that we spend, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to resonate with voters, and I'm happy that it's forward this year, because I think it's an important limit that you can put on the budgeting process leading into it. That way, you're not having to take a budget that's high and have to reduce it at the annual meeting. So it's I think it's going to be a popular thing this year, and I hope that folks consider it seriously. And for those reasons, I hope that the school board votes to, and the budget committee both recommend this common sense article to lead to inflation-based sustainable spending, instead of the spending we've been seeing that's been it's averaged more than double the rate of inflation. And that's not good for taxpayers. People are being taxed out of their homes. This will be a solution to that. It makes the changes slowly over time, and I think it would be a very positive thing for the school district to adopt. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Seeing no other people rising, we are going to close the...
I have a question for the attorney.
Sure.
Jim?
A couple thoughts. One is, and I don't know if the petitioner is able to answer, if there's a lead petitioner, if Eric can answer the question or not. But the $27,000 per pupil, I know in the prescribed language in the statute, it leaves a blank. The statute itself says that the tax is calculated using the current per pupil cost times average daily membership. The legislature didn't, I guess, think it was prudent to define per pupil cost. That's odd to me, because that isn't a number that everyone understands. To me, that has to mean the per pupil cost calculated every year by the Department of Education. To me, the blank in the statute, unless I'm wrong and there's some legislative history there, the number that you plug into that blank is the current per pupil cost. That's how you get the process started. I suspect it's less than $27,000, but to me, it's like, I don't really care either way. I just don't know if you put that up there and it's not $27,000 and it's the DOE number.
It's deceiving.
It's just weird, and I don't know if it's it may be deceiving. Voters may think, oh, 27,000 is great, and the DRA may say, you don't get to dictate that. That's the state number. So that issue somehow has to get resolved before the ballot, and I didn't write the law, and I'm not a court. So I don't know what the fix is for that. I'm just saying this presents a problem going into the meeting, and I always try to do my best to figure out how to solve those issues for the voters. I don't know what the solution is here. That's one issue I just wanted to raise that the board should be aware of. There's another thing. I think that's really it for that one. That's really the biggest.
So that number's not accurate, the 27,000, like, it can't be in
Deceiving.
there.
Very deceiving.
To me, it's not the right number. I think the right number is whatever your current per pupil cost is as determined by the Department of
But the
Education.
board can't amend a petition
No, the
warrant.
legislative body can. I suspect it'll come up, and then someone will ask for that number and potentially try to amend it, and the legislative body can amend and it can amend this
Right.
article in I don't have a ton of flexibility, but it is amendable.
Do you want me to answer the attorney's question? Is the right answer yes?
I'll allow it, sure. Judge and jury over here.
My understanding of this legislation is that it's, any number can be selected by the school board, or in this case petitioners. It doesn't have to be the number that's the current number. It can be any number, it can be higher, it can be lower. It's just, there's a blank for the number of dollars you put in there, and there's nothing in the statute saying it has to use DOE's number. It's just a figure that whoever's putting this article forward thinks is appropriate and would be something that would be acceptable to the voters. That's my understanding of the legislative intent.
Okay.
So I guess I just have a question. This is for the attorney, or Mr. O'Shaughnessy. So reference to 32.5D is an inappropriate RSA reference.
I think 32.5D is the statute that enables you to adopt a cap, and
It's actu-
32.5E is the section that is the process for.
It's actually E and F.
Okay, it's E and F now?
Yeah.
All right, I'm looking at the
I can-
the chapter law, so that reference needs to be
Yeah,
fixed
so
as
this
well.
is from Gen Court.
Yeah, that's the more, yeah, you're right. And I have that notation. I'm
yeah, and
looking at the old chapter law,
Yep,
so when
and
they
it has
actually
effective-
codified it,
Yep, it has
changed the
effective
reference.
October 1st. So-
I can mention something about
Well,
that.
let her finish.
Okay.
You're right.
So my question to Mr. O'Shaughnessy is, when looking at F, it clearly stipulates, shall we adopt the provisions of the wording of the question shall be, shall we adopt the provisions of 32.5E, so on and so forth, where you would not submit a recommended budget that is higher than blank dollars per pupil cost, and so on and so forth. And referring back to 32.5E is the place where the notation is made in the law that says shall not exceed the current per pupil cost. So that looks to me that it's reinforcing the suggestion that you made. Do you want to read this?
Yeah. I can also pull it up on my phone.
Yep.
Like, right
But that-
now.
Yeah.
I'm looking at
So
what you're looking
ultimately
at.
though,
It's-
ultimately though, it doesn't, I mean, we can debate this, but the truth of the matter is that this will, you're not advising us to remove this
No,
warrant.
no, it's not.
So instead, this is all information that needs to be provided to the voters so that they have clarity at the meeting. But we
Yeah.
can't do
This
anything
is a
at
minor,
point.
this is a minor technical thing
And
that
right.
can be amended.
Right.
That the voters absolutely should amend, because if they don't, again, it's like the wrong reference.
So it's
so-
really important that you're there, or one of your,
Yes.
But it's
peers
more,
is there
it's more
to,
than that.
but it's more than that, yeah.
Because
Right.
from what Darlene
I
brought
know.
up, the dollar amount can't be more than something.
Right, I
But the
understand the
question that I
problem.
have based on what she read is, and this, I'm not trying to be facetious, is it like capital per pupil cost, or, I mean, does the law leave it open to defining per pupil cost, or do you have to use the state's definition?
That's the question we ask legal counsel, because it is defined by the state of New Hampshire. And every single district gets a per pupil cost.
Right.
So all of a sudden, anyone who just is developing a number, it's like, where does it come from? So that $27,000 does not at all relate to the per pupil cost for the Hollis Brookline Co-op.
But if we wanted it to be, let's say the DOE calculation is 21,750.
Yep.
And we said, okay, we wanna set our cap at 27,000 using that process, does the law allow that?
Well, you're catching up to my original conversation, which is like.
That's what he said.
So there's an issue when you're a lawyer, right? Like, at some point, what you're doing is you're trying to figure out what a court is gonna say if I brought this to them. And in the context of an annual meeting, I'm trying to figure out if this passes as worded, what is the DRA gonna say? They're gonna kind of be like, they don't know. They're gonna send it to their lawyers. Their lawyers are gonna say, let's look at legislative history. It's often very hard to determine the meaning of a law based on legislative intent. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You're basing it on what people said in hearings, what the proponents of the bill said when it was in hearings. At the end of the day, I'm guessing about what a court's going to do, but I'm not a court, and only courts decide what the law says and is and means. So I'm kind of going into this like, I'd love it if it was really clear. And I can tell you there are a number of places where per pupil cost is defined. It's in the charter law. It defines per pupil cost. I don't have a good answer for you. I will try to get a good one when I come to the meeting, because I don't want to stand up there and say I'm a lawyer and I don't have a good answer for you. But sometimes like that has to be the way it is. The other thing I was going to ask Andy is like ADMR, average daily membership in residence. Where does that number come from? It's kind of a rhetorical question. You asked me to define it. It's defined two different places in the law. Those definitions aren't actually, when you really scrutinize those definitions, even those aren't internally consistent, because they use the term approved charter school, and I'm not sure if that means school district approved charter school or state DOE approved charter school. It's a brand new law. And it's not good or bad. I'm not judging the law. It's brand new, and there are some things that need to be sorted out with the law. It's not perfect. There are inconsistencies and issues. So we're stuck with it. So we'll have to figure it out.
I think that's where we have to come to. I think we have to come to the point where, the school board will take a position on it. It'll get presented to the voters. You'll be there to say some version of what you just said, so that voters understand that there's ambiguity in this. If this passes.
There are consequences.
Significant ambiguity. Yes, Drew.
As the moderator, I will be very clear that I will invite an amendment from the floor to fix the language so that it matches the current language in the law.
I think the problem is no one really knows what the language in the law actually means. Is that what I'm getting the sense of? Like, we're not sure whether you can just plug in $27,000 or you have to use the DOE's number for. We don't know what number is supposed to go in there. So we'll try to get some clarity on that before the meeting.
But the language in the law doesn't talk about that. It talks.
It sounds like there were places.
The language in the law is, this is
Has
the language
changed.
in the law. and the only thing
It is?
that's in the prescribed language is, see where it says $27,000?
Yep.
That's a blank, it's a line.
Okay.
So, it's like, well, it's inviting something to be placed there as a placeholder, and I don't know what the thing is.
Because, yes,
So-
because for any district, the cost per pupil would be different. So
Yes.
to assign a number to it is like assigning in legislation, like how they determine adequacy. They assign a cost that gets assigned to everybody, but every district has a different cost per pupil.
So
Yes.
where'd this number 27,000 come from? The
From
writer?
the petitioner.
Oh, just pulled it, okay, all right.
But, you know, as a reminder, I think I mentioned before, when I presented the cost per
Thin
pupil
air.
chart,
Right,
the
thin air,
DOE calculated cost per pupil, removed certain elements of the budget, so it doesn't really equal what our budget is for the district.
Krista, did you have a question?
So I guess, is the fear, because it's blank, is the fear that the DRA is thinking it's going to be the state number? And so we adopt this, and we adopt it based on the 27,000, and they come back and say, well, we don't know where that number came from.
Right.
We're gonna assign this number, so therefore your budget needs to be a lot lower
Exactly.
Yeah.
than you assumed it was going to be based on is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so when I'm talking to voters, right, at the meeting, like, my overarching goal is to try to make sure that everyone in the room, like, understands the effect of what they're doing. And so what I can't guarantee now, without much more information, which I may not be able to really get, maybe there's some clear legislative history. If it says 27,000, I'm not sure what the DRA is gonna say. But that creates a problem, because if people are voting based on the expectation that it's 27,000, and it's actually not,
It's not transparent.
it's not transparent. Like, they don't know what the effect of what they're doing will be.
Exactly.
We have somebody else, Drew? Yeah. Are you good?
Erin
Restate your
Hubbard.
name, restate your name and address for us.
Yes, ma'am. Erin Hubbard, 90 Moore Hill Road, Hollis.
Thank you.
I guess I'm curious about what happens in 5 years with this law if it stays on, with this warrant article, if it stays on the books. So $2,700, whatever the number might be,
27,000,
that
right?
some, or, yeah, whatever number the petitioner puts in there, that's static and isn't movable. So in 5 years, if there's increased costs for supplies, textbooks, computers, we're still gonna be stuck with $27,000. So it seems to me that it makes sense for it to be based on the other option that the lawyer mentioned. So just, I'm curious, am I
Because that
reading
number
that
would
right?
change.
So,
Yes.
no, it's, yeah, so just to be clear, what happens is, when this passes, it sets the initial amount. Then in subsequent years, the amount changes based on, that becomes the new base, right? And then it changes based on inflation, and
Oh, yeah, there you go.
and it changes based on changes in your ADMR. So if you go up a certain percentage over the prior year, you get to, that multiplier gets added. So that number changes. Right now, we're talking about, if it passes, what's the starting year amount? And then from then on, it
I
just keeps
see.
changing.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it isn't that dollar figure that changes, it's the ADMR inflation.
Yeah.
that
And
are
the inflation,
drivers.
because it's adjusted
It
for that.
does, yeah, it's got this.
It's got the annual
CPI
increase. Yep, okay.
clause.
So it's not static, actually. Okay. All right.
Sure, we see.
I have a question.
I think we'll,
Oh, sorry.
I know. You know what? Everybody else has asked questions. Go ahead, Roll.
This is your big one.
The concern that I have is that we're going to get into a do loop situation at the district meeting, and people will want to change the number back and forth maybe several times, and we may end up being 4, 5, 6 hours, or maybe multiple days trying to come up with a number. So,
I second your concern.
so my question is, because as written with a faulty number, there is a defect in what I'm seeing. Is it possible that maybe we shouldn't even consider it at all? Eliminate it from the list.
I don't know that we have that option.
So I feel like we're really careful not to do that, and we have this one exception in Article 9, and I just, my opinion, and I can't speak for the whole board, is that this is a petition warrant article. It has an issue. We've had this before, where petition warrant articles have legal concerns, and we just address it at the meeting
Okay.
to the voters. Am I afraid of what you're afraid of? Yeah, sure. I don't wanna see that happen, but I don't know what else to do. I mean, this is one of the concerns of the petition warrant article, like, people might amend it, try to amend it 3 times. I don't know what'll happen.
So it's just to
I don't
keep a
have a
couple
crystal ball.
things, and make sure if I say something like that doesn't sound right, let me know. It's getting late.
Yeah,
It's a
no, we know.
3/5 vote, and it's secret ballot vote. It doesn't go to the official ballot, cause you're not an SB2 district.
Right. It happens in
So-
our town.
The kind of like, the stuff that can like you have some control over what transpires to some degree, and I know, there's other things that can happen.
Does
in
it say it's a
tradition.
required secret ballot?
No. It says,
No.
yes, it does. It's by ballot. It's by the
Okay.
polls have to be
So
open
in
for an
theory,
hour.
every cycle could last
Wait,
1.5 to 2 hours.
This has to be a secret ballot? Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, the
Right.
law just says by ballot, but not by official ballot. And when they say by ballot, that means secret
Okay,
ballot.
got
That's
it.
just what we call it.
So,
Sometimes you call it yes/no ballot.
can I ask just one more question? This is Article 11, our budget is Article 3.
Affects next year.
If our budget passes,
This would be the
Go
following
ahead.
year.
Go ahead and ask your question.
does this,
No, doesn't take.
Do you want this back?
so,
Oh, sorry.
so Article 3, our budget would pass, so this would not be relevant for this year.
Till next year.
FY '27.
Jim, I have
Okay.
one more question. What year for January 1st? Since this is
Oh,
a
I
brand,
know.
this is a brand new law, is it January to just 25? Is it 24? I mean, it doesn't specify what year.
Good question, Andy.
That's why he makes the big bucks.
Did you have a comment?
I mean, the issue is, right, so let me just present that and articulate it. At the time you're voting on this, will the or you're preparing your budget, like, will the January 1 rate of inflation be known? Or do you use the prior years? You go back like
12 months.
12 months to get that year's, and I think maybe it's an easy answer, and we're just not, but this is new again. Legislature said January 1, what do they have in mind? I don't know if someone has the answer. I don't have the answer.
So, okay.
I don't
Name and
either. Alyssa Rasmussen, Brookline, New Hampshire, or 1 Winterbury Road, sorry, first time. If we were under SB2, what would happen to something like this? Where we
You
were
would
just
you
voting
would
on the
debate
ballot.
and discuss and potentially amend and do all that stuff, and then whatever version you ended up with, you could amend it 10 times over, deliberative, whatever you ended up with, would go to the official ballot, and on the second Tuesday in March, you'd vote on whether to approve it, and it would still need a 3/5 majority to pass.
So you'd have to try to make sense of this only at the deliberative session, and then whatever they come up with goes on the ballot.
Yes.
So people are voting on what they don't necessarily understand and what we don't understand.
Right.
Okay. That's the reason that I don't support SB2. And anybody thinking about it, most states or most towns that have done it regret it. So
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to bring that up.
Just one more question, Jim. Based on that, at deliberative session or annual meeting, that number can go up or down,
Which number?
the 27,000.
Yeah.
In
So,
theory.
but only if we're reading that the cost per pupil defined by the state is not what we're using. So we could move that to
Yes.
50,000.
We could have, listen, like, to kind of take that to like a total absurd place.
Not absurd,
You could
it's-
have,
it's 6
we
hours
could be here
later.
until 2 in the morning amending this, come up with a magic number that everybody likes. 3/5, like, whatever, 3/5 vote, it's gonna take a lot. And then the DRA could say that was all a waste of time, it's the per pupil cost by statute. That's what I'm gonna try to head off before we get there in March, but I don't know. I don't know if I'll get there.
So I appreciate, do we have anything else? I appreciate all the feedback. We'll just move forward, please. Article 12, petition warrant article. Is that the one that's up there?
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
a different one,
Yeah,
sorry.
hold on.
Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5-B and implement a tax cap whereby the governing body or budget committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes this year's base that is higher than the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised last year's base, adjusted for inflation using the inflation index CPI-U for the Boston, Cambridge, Newton, Mass, New Hampshire area published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and the change in attendance in accordance with the RSA 32:5-B. 1B?
Yeah.
1-B. I'm going to open the floor for public comment.
Everyone, right?
Eric Power, Westview Road, Brookline. I did sign this petition as well. This petition is a local tax cap that is RSA 32.5B. So the actual new law, another new law that passed, is that it allows the tax cap, instead of adjusting by a fixed dollar amount or a fixed percentage, lets you do one based on an inflation index that you choose. In this case, the CPIU was chosen. So the way the local tax cap works, it's really, the previous one was a budget cap, which is on total appropriations. The tax cap is actually on the tax effort. So the tax effort, as the Budget Committee had talked about, that's your total appropriations minus your estimated revenues. And if you have a fund balance, you bring that forward as an adjustment. And you have to keep your proposed budget total, all the appropriations, underneath the tax cap. And this one is based on the base from the previous year. So whatever you had from the previous year, you multiply by the inflation index, and then that becomes your tax, local tax cap for the current year. This is it's similar but different than the school district budget cap because it is based on tax effort. And the other thing that's different about this, the local tax cap, it gets overridden by a simple majority. So right now, the school district budget cap had a 3/5 to override. This can be overridden by a simple majority at the annual meeting. But the starting point needs to be below what's recommended by the Budget Committee and the school board, has to be below what the tax cap is for that year. So what's a little bit different, I think, in my reading of the law, is that this resets every year. So if you have a big increase, that becomes your base for the following year. And it follows inflation. So the inflation is sort of the guidance for that year. I do believe that they use the inflation index from January 1st of the year, so you have to kind of estimate it before you get to the meeting, and when you get to the meeting in March, or the budget hearing now, you should have the number. It becomes available this time of the year, and that would then give you, how much money you could recommend. So it might be, this law is a little bit older than the other, although it has a new component to it. I think, again, this provides some guidance that keeps the tax rate from really going up more than by inflation. If you don't exceed the tax cap, then essentially you're going to be not increasing the appropriations or the tax effort more than inflation. So I think for those reasons, it's a very logical metric and logical piece of legislation to adopt. I think it would provide some stability. Instead of getting 8, 9, 11% increases year to year, you'll follow what's happening by inflation. And if the district decides to override that, they certainly have the flexibility. So for those reasons, I think this is a good thing to consider. You might prefer the school district budget cap, you might prefer the local tax cap, or you might prefer both. So it's up to the voters to decide what they want. So for those reasons, I hope the school board and the budget committee both recommend this article. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else rising, there's nothing else I need to talk to Jim about that one. Seeing no one else rising, I'm going to close the floor for public comment on petition warrant article 12 at 8:50. And I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:50 p.m. and reconvene the school board.
I'll reconvene the budget committee.
I think the first action the school board needs to do is amend the first article. Right?
First and second.
First and second. So, I need a motion by a member to amend the Article 1 with the proposed language identifying the funding mechanism as bonds or notes.
So moved.
Moved by Rob.
Second.
Second by Kate. Okay, Krista? All right, is there any conversation, question about that? It's to amend the Article 1, the proposed language identifying the funding mechanism as bonds or notes motioned. Yeah, that's right. Got it.
That will trigger the hearing on the 13th.
Correct?
Yes.
And it will be the language we discussed tonight.
Okay. Any conversation? Okay, all those in favor of amending Article 1 to be bonds? 6-0, motion carries. Article 2,
Hey, Holly,
yes?
point of order, can I leave?
Yes.
I have a point of order, actually. Can we take a position on the article as well?
We will, but I'm gonna amend the first two, make the two amendments first,
Then
and
we're
then.
gonna go back?
And then we're gonna go back, because I'd like to just have those amended, if that's okay. I need a motion to amend Article 2 with the proposed language identifying the funding mechanism as bonds or notes.
So moved.
Was it Article 3 in this current one, or is
No,
it
two.
2? Okay.
Only two, 'cause it was
Okay,
clause.
we already we redid it.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, wait a second. I have to amend Article 3 with the proposed language identifying the funding mechanism as bonds or notes, identify it as Article 2, and renumber the remaining articles accordingly.
So moved.
Moved by Rob.
Second.
Second by Kate. Any discussion? Is Tom in the room? I can't see him.
No, he just went out with Jim.
Okay, well, all those in favor? 5-0, motion carries. We're not waiting for him. Sorry, Tom. I think we will wait till we get here. That's okay. I wanna wait for Tom to be in the room, actually.
We got another Tom, we'll sell you this Tom.
Okay, okay. So
Sorry,
moving
we'll
on.
rent you this Tom.
Now we need to take positions, so. Hold on, I have to find that. Just give me a second, I'm sorry, I know we're all really tired.
Since you're doing renumbering, do you wanna consider the legal issue of
Number 9?
number 8?
9.
No, 8. Which one, the commission?
That was 9.
It was 9? I have it as 8.
I have it as 9. Sorry, I'm trying to find Article 1 here in my stuff, so, I'm sorry, but, okay, here we go.
Hold on.
I think, can we do that as we
Yeah,
get
we can
to,
certainly do
can we
that.
do that when we get to Article 9?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. I just wanna put that. Oh, let's see where we are.
Are we gonna reread all of these?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
No, we're not.
Okay.
Silly rabbit.
So, I do need
You'll
to
be
wait.
doing it to an empty audience.
The thing
I'll
is,
tell him.
I need Tom to come back in the room because he wants to be on record.
You know, we're
of
gonna
having
run out of
COVID.
candy in a minute.
Okay, yeah, we're going
I
to.
said Tom for coffee.
He needs to come and take a position.
No sugar, no meeting.
I'm gonna kill him. No, sorry, no.
Wow, your mic's live.
Is he coming?
No,
Thank you.
begrudgingly, I think.
Strike that from the record.
It was just a figure of speech. I don't mean it seriously. Tom, I need you to vote. Okay.
We're gonna
So
actually get to
Article
the
1,
votes.
I need a motion to recommend Article 1 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Rob,
Second.
second by Kate. All those in favor of Article 1? 6-0, that's the school board.
Okay, I'll take a motion from the Budget Committee to move Article 1 for the HBMS Energy Conservation as written from Tom Enright.
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Roll calls required. Brian?
Yes.
He's awake.
Matt?
Yes.
Tom Whalen?
Yes.
Raul?
Yes.
Dave Blinn?
Yes.
Tom Enright?
Yes.
Tom Solon?
He's my father.
Yes.
Darlene votes yes. So it's 8-0. The Budget Committee recommends Article 1.
Point of order.
Oh,
Yes.
God.
When can we ask questions after, before we actually take a vote?
Yeah,
We
we
just
probably
took a
should,
vote.
we should probably like have a moment for
Did you
discussion.
have any questions?
On the next one I do.
Okay. We'll make sure we do that.
Okay. So I need a motion to recommend Article 2 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Rob, second by Krista. Is there any discussion on this? I didn't give you a chance last time. So if you want it, you can discuss them both. I don't care. Is there any discussion on this? Any advocacy, anything?
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, all those in favor? 6-0. School board recommends this article.
Okay, motion from the Budget Committee to recommend Article 2, the solar energy conservation project as written.
Questions? I have a
Wait,
question.
I know, I want to bring it to the floor first, Raul. Motion by Dave, seconded by Tom Enright. Are there any questions or discussion?
Yeah, so my question is, when we started this effort a long time ago, we're gonna have leases. And under the leases, we're gonna be going perhaps a little over the $600,000 that is being retired with the existing bond. Now that we're going through a much cheaper approach, has anybody calculated what that number is? Because I wanna make sure that the voters understand that we're not gonna reach the $600,000 number, and therefore, there's gonna be some amount of dollars that will be given back to the district.
These
So,
two articles are 500,000 total.
right, so I wanna be able to highlight. Originally, I was gonna vote no, but given that we've done a good job in coming up with a different approach, I'm gonna support it. But I wanna make sure that we highlight the fact that we're really saving some amount of dollars as well.
Okay, so in the amortization schedules that I shared, and which aren't final, they're estimated, the bond payments due aren't level. So with leases, they were level funded, and it was the exact same amount
Right.
every year. With the bonds, they're not. They do decrease slightly over
Yeah.
time. So I would, without, what we will include at the March meeting is the overview of how that changes. You know, we have the half-year interest payment, then we move up to a full principal and interest payment, and then it starts to decline over time. So once you reach that point, those additional years aren't incremental to that first full year. Once you hit that first full year, that's your highest amount you'd be contributing, and it goes down after that.
Right.
So in that first year, hold on. If I add we have 3 years of payments listed in this, presentation. So I would say we originally had 660 in combined between the two. The first year's around 692, the second year's around 674, the third year's around 674, and it decreases after that. So as you're getting out to year 15, one is for 15 years, one's for 20. So the last 5 years will only be a $400-ish thousand payment, and the other one will, because 200,000 comes off.
Right.
So you see where it might be a little bit higher at the beginning, but it especially after year 15, $200,000 drops off, and it's dramatically lower.
I just wanna make sure we highlight that.
Yep, we'll show that. And then we'll do that long-term chart
Yep.
that shows where the debt had been for the district.
Yep.
And then it decreases down. Now we'll be finishing and expiring the middle school, and then we're down to the HVAC and the turf field, and then these two would be layered on top of it. But we'll put that together in the chart and present that.
That's
Any
all
other
I have.
questions?
That's all I have.
Okay. So I'll do the roll call. Brian, are you in favor or opposed to Article 2?
In favor of it, yes.
Thanks, Brian. Matt?
Yes.
Raul?
Yes.
Tom Enright?
Yes.
Tom Whalen?
Yep.
Tom Solon?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
And Darlene votes yes. Passes, Budget Committee recommends 8-0.
Great. Moving forward to Article 3, which is the operating budget. I need a motion by a board member to recommend Article 3 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Rob,
Second?
second by Kate.
So just to be clear, as presented will be for the higher amount.
Right.
Mhm.
Are there any comments?
We fully intend to amend on the floor depending on how the articles.
Go, right. Yes, Tom?
I haven't yet seen any evidence that our test results are directly correlated to our operating budget. I think our keeping the schools open are directly related to the operating budget. If people are concerned about our test results and things like that, it would be really good to have them come to board meetings when we're talking about curriculum and coursework and that sort of thing. but the budget isn't the place to attack if you have questions about those, in my opinion.
That's great, thank you. Just for the public record, we've regularly checked in with the administration and the budget committee and are aware that this budget will cover the needs for our students for the year, and that's why we support it. And I also want to just go on record of thanking the budget committee for all of their work on this, especially the chair. So, any other comments? All those in favor? 6-0.
I'll take a motion to recommend the operating budget at $31,160,427 from Tom Enright, seconded by Dave. Any questions, comments? Would like to take an opportunity to thank the administration and the business office. A lot of hard work goes into putting together the budget. There are lots of questions that I send to the business administrator, especially as I'm putting these presentations together, and I appreciate the diligent effort and rapidity at which she answers my questions. She's very quick and takes, like I said, a lot of time to answer some follow-up questions, so I sincerely appreciate that. And again, thank the superintendent and the administrators of the building for their process and what they put into the budget. We've been lucky for the past several years to have budgets come in under guidance, have all our questions answered, and deliver what I feel is an excellent educational opportunity for the students of the district. So thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, we'll start with Brian.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Raul.
Yes.
Tom Enright.
Yes.
Tom Whalen.
Yes.
Tom Solon.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Darlene. Motion passes 8-0. Budget committee recommends the operating budget.
Great. Moving on to the contract with our Hollis Education Support staff. I need a motion to recommend Article 4 as presented. Moved by Krista. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Cindy. Are there any comments? Again, thank you for all your hard work, negotiating team, and I really hope this sets us up well to hire great staff and to keep great staff, because that's the goal. All those in favor? 6-0.
I'll take a motion to recommend the support staff contract for $133,419 as the 25-26 impact. Moved by Tom Enright, seconded by Dave Glenn. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Brian, recommending.
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Raul,
Abstain.
Tom Enright,
Yes.
Tom Whalen,
Yes.
Tom Solon,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Darlene votes yes. So 7-0-1 with Raul abstaining.
Okay. Moving forward to Article 5, which is the SAU budget. I need a motion to recommend Article 5 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Rob. I need a second?
Second.
Second by
Kate.
Kate, thank you. I don't recognize Kate's voice. Any comments? Again, thanks to the SAU Budget Committee for coming up with all this and doing all that work. All those in favor? All the other people. 6-0.
Okay, motion to approve the SAU budget in Article 5 for $1,171,278 as the cooperative school district portion.
So moved.
By Tom Enright, seconded by Dave. Any questions?
Was that a little lower than last year?
$12,000.
Well,
It's $2,000 higher.
in total,
That's it?
the budget's a little bit
Yeah, it's
a little bit
12,000,
higher.
but we're down revenue of 50, so the total allotted over the 3 districts is about 62.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Brian,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
Tom Enright,
Yes.
Tom Whalen,
Yes.
Tom Solon,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Darlene votes yes, passes and recommends SAU budget 8-0.
Okay, Article 6 is the Facilities Maintenance Trust, which is $300,000. I need a motion to recommend Article 6 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Rob. I need a second. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor? 6-0, we vote to recommend.
Motion to move Article 6 for the Facilities Trust for $300,000 as written.
Yes.
From Tom Enright, seconded by Dave Glenn. Questions? Comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Brian,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
Tom Enright,
Yes.
Tom Whalen?
Yes.
Tom Solon?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Darlene votes yes. Budget Committee recommends the trust, vote by a vote of 8-0.
In Article 7, I need a motion to recommend Article 7, which is the contingency fund, as presented.
So
Moved by Rob,
Second.
second by Kate. Any comments? All those in favor? 6-0. School board recommends.
Well, that's why my number is off. I'll take a motion to recommend the contingency for $125,000 from Tom Enright, seconded by Dave. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Brian?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Raoul?
Yes.
Tom Enright?
Yes.
Tom Whalen?
Yes.
Tom Solon?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Darlene votes yes.
Are you
So
guys
the
done?
Budget Committee recommends the contingency by a vote of 8-0.
And you guys are done? Or are you gonna take votes on a
We're
couple
gonna
others?
take-
Okay.
We're gonna take some votes.
Okay.
Call me Tom.
Could I just ask
Okay.
a question? What, Raul, was your abstention a conflict of interest? Abstention?
Yes.
He wants
Can
to
that
sleep
be
in the
noted?
house.
Yes, okay, thank you, Tom. I'll just say it out loud for our person taking our minutes for Dawn. So back to Article 2 for the Budget Committee, the vote was 7-0-1 with Raul abstaining due to a conflict of interest because I can just say it.
I think that was Article 4,
Article
actually.
4.
Article
What
4.
did I just say?
2, but you
I'm
meant 4.
sorry, I meant Article 4 for the HESA agreement. I looked at Article 4.
Yeah, my wife works for,
Yes.
under the HESA contract.
So it's a conflict of interest. Thank you for clarifying that, Tom.
Okay, so, petition warrant Article 8 is to put tax impact on the warrant. This is a weird way of doing this, but I need a motion to recommend Article 8 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Cindy. I need a second.
Good luck.
I need a second.
Second.
Going
Second by
once.
Kate. Okay, so we're gonna take a position, and is there anybody who would like to comment on this, or has any questions?
I do have a question. Darlene, and it's a question to Darlene. Can you envision a mechanism by which your concerns and objections to this would be reduced or removed?
No. The law doesn't allow for the flexibility of putting the language in context. Our tax bills don't allow for anyone to easily identify what the co-op tax rate currently is, and I don't see either town changing the format of their tax bills, of our tax bills. I would also say that while this information is presented here, it will be posted. It'll be posted as part of the package that gets uploaded prior to March meeting. Anyone could send questions to the Budget Committee if they have questions or concerns about what the rates are. We don't get any correspondence. We don't have a planned meeting. I would say usually they could attend a meeting at any time during the planning period to understand things better. But to your original question, since it's clear that it's really just a succinct, here's the tax impact without an up or down, it's part of your, this or that rate, no, I don't see my personal opinion changing.
So is there anyone else who has a question or comment? Okay, so if you vote yes, you're voting to recommend Article 8. So all those in favor of recommending Article 8? All those opposed? So the school board does not recommend Article 8. Are you guys taking a vote on this one?
We are.
Okay.
So I will take a motion to recommend Article 8, which is to include the tax impact on the warrant, from Tom Enright, seconded by Dave. I would add, just in our point of discussion, that I'd like a sense of the Budget Committee as to whether, depending on the vote, you'd like to provide input as a Budget Committee, or would rather reserve your comments to be made individually as members of the community.
I would like it when you speak.
Okay. Me too.
I do think that that's critical, that you articulate the objections to it, because in the absence of that explanation, it seems unreasonable to object because we put it out there.
Yes.
Right, right,
Can I make a comment?
sure.
This comes across to me as someone who's trying to suggest that we're not being transparent. And for the going on 40 years that I've been in town, I don't remember ever not having a warrant article without the tax impact. So for that reason, I think we're,
And I will-
traditionally what we've done for many, many years is appropriate and correct and transparent. So therefore, we don't need to,
And I
I
will,
don't support the article.
and I will add that, but the March meeting is the one place where I do include, this is true for the Hollis School District as well, I can't speak to Brookline. But I serve on the Hollis School District Budget Committee, so I know that what gets put into that presentation, where we do present an overall estimated impact for each budget that gets presented. So it really is, it really is context. It isn't just what these individual articles represent, what the tax impact is in total just for the co-op. We really do include the estimates for each of the school district budgets in each of the towns, and depending on the timing of the March meeting, sometimes that includes the estimates based on what the final budgets are that are passed, and we're going first, so ours will include estimates of everything going forward. So I really do think that the information provided really does give the legislative body context, as opposed to just, a quick
And on
little
top of that,
annotation.
we go at length to publish all this, the presentations and all the material ahead of time.
Yep.
And people who really wanna know where the information is.
Okay, so right now, the vote is to recommend including tax impact on the warrant. Brian?
I vote yes.
I,
Matt?
No.
we want to,
Raul?
No.
Tom Enright?
no.
Tom Whalen?
Nope.
Tom Solon?
No.
Dave?
No.
Darlene votes no. So the budget committee, I was confused by the wording of this, isn't,
I think
not
so.
recommending by a vote of 1 to 7?
Well, if you say
wait.
not recommending,
The
it's
vote is to not
7-1.
recommend. I don't know how we're gonna word, how we word all of that, but we're not recommending it.
We have the vote on record, and they'll work.
We're gonna figure it out.
I have a point of order.
Sure.
For item 9, given that we've heard from council this evening, I don't think it's appropriate that we take any kind of motion to accept or not to accept. I think and if you need a motion to remove that from the warrant, I'm willing to do that right now.
That's what I think we need. I think
Right,
we
so
need
I
a motion
move-
to remove
I move
Article
to
9.
remove Article 9 from the warrant.
I need a second. Who seconded that? Krista. Is there any comment? All right, all those in favor of removing Article 9?
On the Charter Commission.
On the Charter Commission, yes. So that's 6-0, that will be removed. I need a motion to renumber Articles 10, 11, and 12 to be Articles 9, 10, and 11.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by Rob. All those in favor of renumbering the articles? 6-0. So now Article 10 is now Article 9, and that would be the SB 2 article that we've seen a lot. Just speaking truth. So I need a motion to recommend Article 9, sorry, the current Article 9, the new Article 9, I guess. Motion. I need a motion. Moved by Kate. Second? Second by Cindy. Okay. Anybody want to comment on SB 2?
I just don't see how a deliberative session would have the exact same difficulties as our regular annual meeting. So I don't see how SB 2 alleviates that. If people have trouble getting to an annual meeting, they will have equal amount of trouble getting to a deliberative session. And worse, those people won't go and will be unaware of what's really behind these articles. So I think it just propagates ignorance about the articles, and it doesn't leave the voter very informed. So that is only one of a plethora of problems I see with SB 2. So I think you know where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always comes down to the same thing. The idea that it's just ballot voting completely negates the importance of the deliberative session. And as we can see from tonight's meeting, there is so much that can happen in a deliberative session, and people need to be present for that. And it doesn't negate it, you have to go. So if you have to go to one, you should go to.
And there's no way for for that legislature to table stuff that should not even go forward.
Right.
Whatever is brought forward in a petition will go to the ballot in one form or another, and that's just another problem I have with SB 2.
And Tom?
I just want to point out that there was, in my opinion, a misstatement made in the public input where it said that Brookline's not having issues with deliberative sessions. Attendance is relatively light. The last deliberative session took over 4 hours, and of that, 3 of the 4 hours were related directly to petition warrant articles. And I think what this points out to is an underlying problem where petition warrant articles are not are not put forth by people who have been doing the research and have been delegated with the authority by the legislative body to protect their interests. You get 25 people who are willing to put their name on a piece of paper with good intentions. And so holding Brookline as an example of why SB2 is good is not going to fly with people who are from Brookline, in my opinion.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of Article now 9 to adopt SB 2? All those opposed, sorry, just like phasing out. 0, 6. We don't recommend that one.
So for the Budget Committee, we traditionally have not taken a position on SB 2, but given some of the perspective that was shared, I'll just look to the Budget Committee to see if they're interested in taking the position this year.
I am. Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll move forward. So I'll take the motion to recommend Article 9 for SB 2 from Tom Enright, seconded by Dave Blinn. So seeing no questions, comments, okay? Seeing none, I'll call the vote for the motion to recommend SB 2. Brian? Matt?
No.
Raul?
I don't recommend, no.
Tom Enright?
No.
Tom Whalen?
No.
Tom Solon?
No.
Dave?
No.
Darlene votes no. So it's 0-8. Budget Committee does not recommend SB 2.
Okay, moving on to what is now Article 10, Petition Warrant Article 10. I need a motion to recommend Article 10.
For the budget cap.
It's adopt the budget cap, yes. I need a motion.
Oh, so moved.
Moved by Krista. I need a second.
Second.
Kate. I don't even know what to say about this one.
I think we have a budget cap. It's these people sitting right here.
And the voters.
And the voters. So we have, it's 2 layers. We have guidance from our budget committee. We have a very good process in place. And then we have additional vetting at the annual meeting where community members can come and we can debate the number and adjust the number. That's our cap. And by the way, if we put a cap in, what do we need a budget committee for? They can all go home. Oh, actually, that might cause you to want it. Probably not the best argument.
I wrote that question an hour ago.
Is there anyone
what do
else
you need it for?
has a
So-
comment on this? I
Well
mean,
said.
the ambiguity is just in and of itself a reason to vote no. So, all those in favor? All those opposed? 0-6. The school board does not recommend.
Okay, motion from the Budget Committee to recommend Article 10 for the budget cap as written, moved by Dave, seconded by Tom Enright. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, so I'll call the vote on the motion to recommend, oh, wait, I will ask the same question before I call the vote. Is there interest in providing an organized response from the Budget Committee for the budget cap?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that as a sense of the board. Great. Brian, calling the vote on the recommendation for a budget cap. Matt?
No.
Raul?
No.
Tom Enright?
No.
Tom Whalen?
Nope.
Tom Solon?
No.
Dave?
No.
Darlene votes no. Budget committee's not recommending the budget cap by a vote of 0-8.
And then we have Article 11, which is the adopted tax cap. I need a motion to recommend Article 11. Moved by by Cindy, seconded by Kate. Are there any comments on this one?
This just seems redundant to the other one.
Well,
So
this
how
is
many
just-
caps, how many caps do you wanna put on top of
That
that?
caps the, this
You know,
caps
we
the,
can have a
this
cap
caps the,
layer cake.
this caps the entire warrant, is my understanding. So it caps everything, which is what Brookline Elementary School District is dealing with now with the changes in the law. The entire warrant has been capped. Their cap was really high in a percentage, and now they're butting up against it because you have to have projects, and you have to have bonds, and you have to have contracts.
So
We don't want it, it's
Yeah.
not our money, we don't wanna spend it, it's just, you have to provide.
The only issue I see is if you have both caps, which one takes priority, and it just is a mess.
Well,
to
it's
have
both,
of
there
them.
would be a budget cap, and then there'd be a tax cap on
Yeah.
the entire warrant.
Yeah.
So it would be a complex process, and it would make budgeting even harder than it already is.
And just for the
Okay,
record
that's-
too, there
It's
is,
just what we need,
there
more
is-
complexity.
there is already, wording, if the budget committee were to not support a capital project, wording has to be adopted in the bond language that says the budget committee is not, approving, because that affects the 10% limitation, and then, things like that. So there is wording and justification and things like that already in place, depending on, input from the budget committee and where they support it. And as we've said, you're overseeing, and ultimately the legislative body can amend and change and add and subtract and ultimately approve or not approve the things that we put in forward.
All of these are tools that have been created over the years to give flexibility to this process. If we start adopting articles like this, we're
Right.
taking flexibility and tools away from what we do.
Absolutely. Okay, so have we not voted yet? All those in favor, school board? All those opposed? 0-6, we do not recommend Article 11.
Okay, motion from the budget committee to recommend, is it Article 11?
Yeah, it's
For the
11 now.
tax cap.
So moved.
So move vote from Tom Whalen, seconded by Dave. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Brian, the motion to recommend the tax cap. Matt?
No.
Raul?
No.
Tom Enright?
No.
Tom Whalen?
No.
Tom Solon? Dave? Darlene votes no. Budget committee does not recommend the tax cap by unanimous vote.
Yes, true.
For the purposes of helping me write the script, first, does the school board intend to speak to any of the petition articles?
I think if there was any we would speak to, I would imagine we might speak to, would we speak to SB2? Is there anything you guys wanted to speak
I'd
to?
be more likely to speak at the microphone as a member of the public than.
Okay,
We don't usually.
okay. Same question as the budget committee.
So, well, I didn't ask the budget committee directly until anyone just jumps in and tells me I'm speaking out of turn. I would say that the budget committee would have an organized response to Article 8 for the tax impact on the warrant, Article 10, the budget cap, and Article 11, the tax cap.
Should have those canned.
With whatever timeline you tell me I have.
You get 2 minutes.
Great, I'll do it.
So when would you entertain a motion to table from the floor?
I'd have to go back and see what I wrote, but,
I think the rules said it can be before it gets brought to the table.
you,
Could
a
be- I mean,
motion
before
to
it
We
pass,
have to listen to all of this.
motion to pass over,
Yep.
I think what I said was, it can be done before the motion comes to the floor, but it requires a 2/3 vote.
Right.
Yes, and it would have to do, the motion would have to occur just before it comes up, not
Yes.
first thing.
That's a question. Could you do it out of order, basically?
You can't, before we start Article 3, you can't say, move to pass over Article 9.
You can't? Okay.
Can't do that.
Okay,
It has
that's a question.
Has to be right before the article. Now, if you really want to waste time, you can move the article you want to get rid of up so it's next and then do it.
No, that's, but here's the other question. If someone has that intent of doing so,
Yeah.
do you advise them to alert you so that you can, so it doesn't become a Jeopardy thing of who presses a button first?
Hey, Drew, here's a couple questions.
Yeah.
Can a person get up and motion to table all, like 10, 11, and 12? Can they
No.
get up and do that? They
I will
can't-
not
can't-
accept that motion.
Could a person get up before Article 8 and say, I'd like to take a motion to dissolve the meeting, and doesn't that
No.
take like, no, okay.
You,
He won't
by
entertain
law,
that.
you have to address every warrant article.
Okay.
to
Can
take
the
action.
motion to pass over be, do you have to be online? Like as a speaker at the podium?
Well, once we've started it, a motion to pass over is kind of, then what you want to do is table.
Okay, so if, okay, so you
But
can motion to
can you-
table
can I
if
get an
it's
answer to
already.
my original question is, can someone walk up to him and say, I'm going to want to make a motion to pass over an Article 8? And alert him so that he is aware of it and leaves a pause there.
That often happens because people, they look at the rules and they say, I don't know how to do this. And they come talk to me and say, this is what I want to do, how do I do it? And I tell them what I want. It's also the case that the moderator gets to speak gets to choose who speaks next. It is a matter of convenience and history that people stand in line and get chosen based on their order in line. But that's not the law. The law says the moderator gets to choose.
Okay. So if someone is of the mindset that they wish to have that motion considered, it's worth them alerting you to that.
It is very much worth them. And, you know, it's kind of silly for somebody to be standing at the podium when I'm not ready for input.
Okay,
You know.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're done here?
Quick question.
Are you good?
Just real quick, Drew, on what you just said about we cannot make the motion to pass over before the article is in order?
No, you can, just before.
I mean, well, that's what I mean, just before.
But
We
not out
can't-
of order.
We can't do it out of order.
Right.
Unless
Is
you-
that your rule, or is that a law?
That is my rule.
So we could ask the legislative body to change the rules?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But once you go through the rules and then you have a vote for people to vote on it,
Yeah.
those are the rules.
You have to do it when
You
you
have
go
to do it at the very beginning.
Well, you can change the rules during the meeting with a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
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 Any other questions for Drew? I'm gonna let you ask. Go ahead.
You need a non-debatable.
I really do, because I have to go.
I move to adjourn.
So moved, Darlene.
I need a second, just say, all those in favor?
I have a
Okay, thank
motion
you.
to adjourn from the budget committee, from Tom Whalen, seconded by Matt McGuire.
I have to call the roll.
You're gonna vote
Brian,